Hey, everybody. Welcome. It's been a while. Glad to see you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's have yet another great late night chat, shall we?
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. If you are in the part of the country that I'm in, I hope that you're staying warm. I have a sweater on, and it's bad out there. There's going to be a winter storm. It's just cold. I mean, it wasn't snowing earlier today, but it was just very, very cold. I have just gotten over being sick. We had a great event on January 11th. Absolutely tremendous. Somewhere between 80 and 100 people attended. At least 80. My goal was 40, and we had a tremendous event. Everyone who was there, thank you. Everyone who helped out with it, thank you. It was really, really a great event. And I got the flu. And so, I did the event. You can see my speech that I gave, which I did give that speech while I had the flu. But I pressed through, and then I just had to get over the flu. But now I seem to be back at my full health. And we're keeping warm here in cold January in my lovely Brooklyn apartment. And I'm just really glad to be back. And I thank you all for being patient. It certainly was frustrating to not be able to stream because I was just coughing and weak from the flu. But I'm back at full health, it appears. And I've got plenty to talk to you all about. And I'm glad to be back. And I thank you all for being here. And, between our great event that we had on January 11th and now today, the need for the kind of work that we are doing with the Center for Political Innovation has become more and more apparent. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So we're just going to have a normal late night conversation the same way we always do. So if you've got something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, the best way to send your question is to buy me a coffee. A number of people bought coffees while I was gone, so I'm going to be answering a lot of questions in the second half of the show. But please send questions, right? That's what I'm here to do, is to answer your questions. You can also do Rumble Rants, and you can Cash App me at CalebMoppin22. I'm here to engage with all of you. And that's really about it. As far as announcements, the Center for Political Innovation is having a tremendous national gathering. Our national convention will take place August 15th, and our 7-day program for people that want to spend 7 days with us and, get involved in, the process of becoming an innovationist and all of that. We are having our 7-day program in Chicago, August 12th through 19th. So that'll be happening. And, it's a long way off. We got a lot of building to do. I'm planning to go around the country for a series of workshops between now and then. We're having some house parties on March 15th. And a lot of things are happening. Our organization is growing. I must say, we've had a number of new memberships come in. We've got new members in West Virginia. Shout out to you. We've got new members in New Jersey. We've got new members in California. And if you're a new member, make sure to check your spam and your inbox to make sure you're getting the invites to our weekly meetings. But today we had a weekly meeting, and our organization is growing. And it's very exciting because the purpose that we serve is becoming more and more important. So I'm going to talk about that tonight, as I said. So if you've got something you'd like me to touch on during the second half of the show, the best way to send your questions is to send it via Buy Me a Coffee is the best way to do it. Go to buymeacoffee/Caleb Moppa and send your questions. You can also do Rumble Rants, and you can also Cash App me at CalebMoppin22. So welcome, everybody. Tonight, I am starting out by explaining that this ICE controversy, what's going on with ICE, is awful. It's absolutely horrible. Just today, just this morning, there was another shooting. This individual, 37 years old, was apparently armed, but it looks like, according to the video, he was disarmed before he was shot. So he did not have his gun on him at the time he was killed, according to the latest video. What happened to Renee Good, this woman who was confronting the Immigration Customs Enforcement officers, was kind of following them around to impede their work in her van, and she was shot and killed. They claim that she was using her car as a weapon. It doesn't look that way if you look at the video. This is awful. All right, the whole situation is awful, and I don't want anyone to misinterpret what I am saying. I'm not defending ICE at all. I have said over and over again that the way the Trump administration is dealing with the crisis of mass migration is only going to make the problem worse, right? If you force immigrant communities into the shadows, that's how the employers get away with paying them low wages. That's how criminal gangs flourish, because communities are afraid to cooperate with law enforcement. There is a problem of mass migration, that people are fleeing their homelands and coming here in big numbers. They can't remain in their home countries. Neoliberal economics is destroying countries throughout the developing world. However, the idea that we're going to solve it by building a giant wall or terrorizing communities, that's not going to work. It's not going to solve the problem. You ask me, do I want to abolish ICE? Sure. But I also want to abolish the FBI, and I want to abolish the CIA, and I want to abolish all the institutions that have been created to serve imperialism. So we're not here to tell people that what's going on with ICE is somehow okay. It's not. I mean, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. That's not what I'm here to do. So if you got the wrong impression from the title of this stream, and you think that I'm supporting ICE or something, or you think I approve of what they're doing, or I don't think it's an outrage, you're wrong, because that's not what I'm saying here. And I'm looking at this situation, and I see this as part of a process, right? How was ICE created? ICE was created, you have the Department of Homeland Security that was created by George W. Bush, that was part of the Bush administration's push for indefinite detention, declaring that people could be held without charges. And they claimed that people could be held without charges. People were held in Guantanamo Bay without any criminal charges, and they were declared enemy combatants. And Guantanamo Bay was created, and torture went on. And then Obama came into office, and what started under Bush, the drone strike program, continued under Obama, which is that the president of the United States declared he had the right to kill anybody, and he could just kill people without due process, without anything. The president declared certain people to be terrorists, and he signed off on it. And then these flying machines, these drones, killed them. And in fact, Obama even killed a U.S. citizen without due process. There was somebody who was declared to be a terrorist who was a U.S. citizen, and the president, without a trial, without any proceedings, Obama signed off on it and killed him. And that drone strike program continued. And there are just example after example of this. This is a process. When you enter a long-term economic crisis, the divisions within the ruling class intensify, and you get the centralization of power and struggles among different factions of the ruling elite. And this is a process, and I oppose all of it, and I am against all of it. And I don't want to see any of it, and I don't justify it. I don't justify the police brutality that the Black community has been facing. I've been opposing that. And, I was video recording the police long before Black Lives Matter had ever been tweeted. I video recorded the police in Cleveland, got 2 young women acquitted in juvenile court because of what I videotaped in terms of police brutality. Don't approve of that. I don't approve of what's been done to different communities. I don't approve of the way the FBI targeted pro-Palestine activists during the Obama administration, or even right up now under the Trump administration. I don't approve of how Ashley Babbitt was shot simply for protesting inside the U.S. Capitol building, arbitrarily executed. I don't approve of how the Uhuru movement had their homes raided by the FBI and they tried to, throw them in prison for 15 years simply for their anti-war speech, wanting peace with Russia. I don't approve of that. I don't approve of any of this. You shouldn't either, right? This is not good. And this is liberal Western democracy breaking down and collapsing into illiberal authoritarianism amid a long-term crisis. That's what's happening, and I oppose it. And I'm not even necessarily saying that other people shouldn't go out and protest against what ICE is doing. I mean, if you think that's the best use of your time, great. What I'm here to tell you is that getting involved in this, at the end of the day, I don't see how getting involved in a struggle being led by the voices of power in the United States, I don't see how adding your voice into something coming from CNN and coming from the Democratic Party is going to make anything better in the country. That doesn't mean what ICE is doing isn't wrong. That doesn't mean there's not reasons to be upset. But I don't see how those of us who are anti-imperialists joining the bandwagon right now, I don't see how it's productive. I don't see how it's going to advance things. So what happens, right? So, Donald Trump is hated by many sections of the American power structure. He's backed by other sections of the American power structure. They're calling him Hitler. They're calling him fascist. They, and they go out and they're mobilizing. They've got CNN sending people out there to mobilize, and they go out and they hysterically call him awful things. And he's done plenty of awful things, like kidnapping Maduro, like bombing Iran, like targeting pro-Palestine students. Now ICE is, apparently been going into people's homes without warrants. Right. There's a memo, a smoking gun memo, where ICE authorities have been told that they could go into people's homes without warrants. And, so what happened? So Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar and, they oust Trump. Then what? How do things get better? And so what happens? We use our resources and our time as anti-imperialists to go and help the Democrat Party, the same party that raided the homes of the Uhuru movement and used the FBI to go after anti-imperialists. The same agency that has that their platform is that we should never negotiate with Russia. We should fight in Ukraine to the last Ukrainian. They're opposed to the negotiations that are happening right now in Dubai that could potentially end the Ukraine war. The same Democratic Party that not only did they blindly support Israel, but wouldn't even let a Palestinian speaker or an Arab American speaker speak at their convention. So we're just supposed to go out and use our resources to bring them to power. And then what? How do things get better? I don't see how things get better by us joining a liberal bandwagon. And honestly, if people had been doing what you're supposed to be doing, what should be done, people had been doing that, we'd be in a very different situation right now. We'd be in a very, very different situation right now. And I actually wanted to use this whole ICE controversy, which is, I look at the situation. Look, it's indefensible. It looks like ICE has killed at least 2 people unjustifiably. It looks like ICE is going into people's homes without warrants. I'm opposed to that. But what's going to stop this kind of thing? What's actually going to stop this kind of thing? And what is behind all of this? The people that are out in the streets, they had a big parade yesterday in Minneapolis. They called it a general strike, which is hilarious. It's not a general strike. A general strike is when labor unions, Peter Coffin had a great article about this that he wrote on his Substack. A general strike is when labor unions and community organizations force businesses to close. And, it's community organizations and labor flexing their muscles and shutting down the economy in order to get what they want. That's not what happened. The regular business community and the Democratic Party, they all voluntarily closed down their businesses and they had a big parade. A parade is not a general strike. That was not a general strike what happened. That was a parade. They had a parade, an anti-Trump parade in Minneapolis yesterday, sponsored by the Democratic Party, sponsored by, George Soros and the Open Society Institute. I mean, it's and I see people, I'm on a lot of leftist email lists, and I see them calling this a glorious uprising or something. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, I mean, this is something that, again, it's not to say that there aren't bad things happening, but we have a unique understanding of why it's happening, and we know what can stop this. And us joining the bandwagon is not going to advance in any way what's going to stop this. And I wanted to use this issue as a way of kind of talking to you all about our perspective and understanding where the innovationist movement is coming from. And I'm going to talk about that tonight, because when it really gets down to it, we are the ultimate anti-revisionists. We are the ultimate anti-revisionists. And it's funny because some people might look at me and the Center for Political Innovation and say, well, you reject dialectical materialism. You believe in God. You don't even call yourself communists anymore. You're not even calling yourselves communists. You are the ultimate revisionists. And actually, if you're saying that, you don't get it. You don't get it. We are the real anti-revisionists. That's what we are. And if you really understood what revisionism and anti-revisionism is, and if you really want to understand why things like this are happening, you got to listen to what we have to say. Folks, we live under a system called imperialism. It is the rule of the world by big banks and big monopolies that are trying to hold back development and keep humanity poor. But starting in the 1890s, capitalism moved into a new stage called imperialism. And imperialism was the dominance of banks over industry, the emergence of an international financial oligarchy, trusts, cartels, and syndicates carving out territorial partition, seizing raw materials, and dominating the world. We live under imperialism. And Vladimir Lenin, he wrote about imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism in its monopolistic stage. But before Vladimir Lenin, Henry Charles Carey wrote about the English system and the British Empire, and how the British had developed a system where whole nations were impoverished and economic development was held back and the population was driven down, underworking the Hindu and sinking the world down to his level, right? Building up one mighty city whose wealth came at the expense of impoverishing entire nations. You can read what Henry Charles Carey wrote about who it was that was backing slavery in the British Empire. And you can also read about geopolitics and what's been written by the people in Eurasia, in Russia and China now, that talk about the civilizations of the sea versus the civilizations of the land, and how empires of the sea hold back development and control trade routes with a mighty navy. There's a lot written about this, but the system that we live under, the rule of the world by big monopolies and big corporations, the rule of the world by a small international financial elite that is actively trying to hold back progress and keep the world poor in order to make themselves rich and drive down living standards and drive down the population, that would not be possible without one thing: socialists. And that's something that it may be hard to swallow, especially if you're somebody who, is new to all of this. You're somebody who's critical of capitalism. You say, I'm a socialist. And you say, what are you talking about, Caleb? What in the world do you mean? This system of imperialism would not be possible. It wouldn't function without socialists, without AOC, without Bernie Sanders, without the British Labour Party, without the French Socialist Party, without the German Social Democratic Party, the SPD, without socialists, imperialism would not work. And this is a hard pill to swallow, but it's true. The labor movement emerged in the Western imperialist countries. Labor unions were created. Socialist parties were created. And originally, the labor unions and the socialist parties' goal was to overthrow capitalism and, have the working class rise up and seize control of the means of production. But that changed. And gradually, socialism as a movement, or social democracy, the Second International, became a mechanism for making imperialism work more effectively. And in fact, they openly called it so. And Edward Bernstein, who was the leader of social democracy in Austria, he actually came up with a concept. He called it evolutionary socialism, or revisionism. He said the movement is everything and the goal is nothing. That the Western system is gradually, one step at a time, becoming more and more socialistic, and that the West is the most advanced, and it's colonizing the developing countries and bringing them along, and eventually they'll become more and more socialistic, and that the movement is everything, the goal is nothing, and that capitalism in the Western countries is gradually becoming more and more progressive with the 8-hour workday and universal male suffrage, and that eventually the West is just gradually becoming a center of social progress. And that all kinds of reforms that socialists fought for actually made imperialism stronger. For example, before first grade in America, what do you go to? You go to kindergarten. Well, we don't speak German in America, do we? Right? But why is it that we call, the grade that you go to in school before first grade kindergarten? It's because they had it in Germany first. It's because of socialists. Socialists, German social democrats and trade unions, demanded public education and daycare. And they organized and they protested for it. And the German emerging imperialist state was pretty weak. And Western capitalism in Germany was particularly weak, and there was a rising, powerful socialist movement, the German Social Democratic Party, led by Karl Kautsky. And they demanded that education and daycare be provided, and it was instituted. And the German government realized that actually it was in their interest as an emerging imperialist power to have kindergarten, because the children would all learn to march in line. They would get military training. And what was intended to be a reform, something to fight for the working class against the capitalists, was actually a mechanism for making German imperialism work better. And that there are many, many examples of this. And in the lead up to World War I, that became very, very clear. World War I would never have happened without the British Labour Party, without the German Social Democratic Party, and that socialism as a movement, revisionism, became an essential part of making imperialism function. That there was a faction in the ruling class, a wealthier faction, that understood that in order to dominate the world and impoverish the world, they needed a more tightly controlled capitalism. the Fabian Society in Britain, right? H.G. Wells and a lot of these intellectuals, Bertrand Russell and others, they realized that in order to make imperialism work, you needed capitalism to be more tightly controlled. The Round Table Group that was created by the estate of Cecil Rhodes, right? Cecil Rhodes was the colonizer of Africa. Rhodesia was what Zimbabwe was called before it won its independence. The colonizer of Africa, Cecil Rhodes, the Rhodes Scholar Program, this big colonizer, he realized that you need a more tightly controlled capitalism in order to colonize and exploit people around the world. And that in order to get the capitalists that aren't on board with this, that just want to make money, in line, you need a kind of fake socialist movement to kick them along. And that socialism as a movement, starting from the 1890s, but really escalating at the time of World War I and more than ever today, socialism as a movement became a movement that was about making imperialism work better. And that's what revisionism is. Revisionism was socialism becoming a method for making this Western imperialist system work more effectively. And that's largely what the forces that are dominating the anti-ICE protests right now want, right? And I can tell you more about that later, but socialism being an essential part of imperialism, and imperialism needing a progressive wing, and that wealthier, higher level of capital, that Anglo-American establishment, that Eastern establishment, that ultra-rich, that Round Table Group, that Fabian Society, that wing of imperialism was essential in making World War I happen. And Vladimir Lenin in Russia was a guy who called himself a Marxist, was a Marxist, but he fumed with rage at socialism. And you read what he wrote, Imperialism and the Split in Socialism. Read on the collapse of the Second International. Lenin ranted against socialism and Marxism because he saw that they were becoming an essential part of imperialism. He fumed with rage. World War I, a horrendous event in which 20 million working people were sent to their deaths. World War I was brought to you by social democracy. It was brought to you by Marxists. It was brought to you by socialists. They could have stopped it, and they didn't just not stop it. They made it happen. They mobilized working people to go and fight and die. And 20 million working people were sent to their deaths. And that what Lenin understood, what Vladimir Lenin understood, was that the socialist movement of Western Europe had become a movement to strengthen imperialism. That's what Lenin understood. And Lenin was one of a small minority of people who called themselves Marxists who were brave enough to say this. There was Lenin in Russia. There was Rosa Luxemburg in Germany. There was Eugene Debs in America. And that was it. Overwhelmingly, the socialist movement supported the First World War, sent workers off to die in the First World War. In Germany, they defended the fatherland of Germany. In France, they defended imperialism of France. In Britain, they were fighting for democracy. And this bloodbath in which the Western colonial powers, Belgium and Luxembourg and Germany and Austria and Turkey and Britain and France all fought each other in the most horrific war humanity had ever seen. It was brought to you by revisionism, by the socialist movement that had watered down its message and become a vehicle for making imperialism work more effectively. and Lenin and the Bolsheviks were a group in Russia that disagreed. And they were not like the other socialists. Let me just emphasize this enough. They downplay this. If you read literature by the Bolsheviks, they are constantly arguing we're the real Marxists, etc. So this won't be apparent to you. But what the Bolsheviks and what Lenin was doing was completely different than what the Social Democrats were doing. Lenin came up with a whole new theory for a party of new type, a highly disciplined organization for people who gave the whole of their lives, a party that engaged in agitation and propaganda. Lenin came up with a whole new theory of imperialism, that imperialism was dominating the world. It wasn't just regular capitalism. It wasn't employees versus employers. It was this globalist imperialist system, and that nationalism and the struggle of oppressed nations against imperialism was a good thing because the enemy was imperialism. It was this globalist financial order that was keeping the world in poverty. It wasn't employers versus employees. It was against imperialism. It was a global struggle against the imperialist system. And the Bolsheviks were weirdos. They were a weird outlier. They had a really bizarre, unique, different interpretation of Marxism. What they were doing was completely different than what the British Labour Party was doing. What they were doing was completely different than what the German Social Democrats was doing. They were against revisionism. They were against revisionism. They were against social democracy as a movement, and they weren't trying to compete with the Social Democrats. They were going lower and deeper to the real masses. Lower and deeper to the real masses. And because of unique historical circumstances, because in Russia and in World War I was very unpopular, and because the Germans gave money to the Bolsheviks, and because of some unique historical circumstances, amid the crisis of World War I, the Bolsheviks took power. And when the Bolsheviks took power, they announced that they would support anybody who was struggling against imperialism. And they had the Congress of the Peoples of the East in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is it's a country that was part of the Russian Empire. In Soviet Azerbaijan, in Baku, they had a gathering, the Congress of the Peoples of the East, and they announced they would support anybody who was struggling against the imperialists. And they supported the Egyptian merchants that were struggling against the British imperialists. And they announced support for the Emir of Afghanistan, a conservative monarchist who was struggling against the British Empire. They said, we'll support anybody who is struggling against imperialism. And they supported people in Asia that were struggling against imperialism. Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who was not a communist, he attended the gatherings of the Communist International as an observer because he was fighting for China against the imperialists. And they supported the African people. They supported people in South America. They supported anyone in their struggle against colonialism and imperialism. It was about opposing that Western system, that British Empire system, that system that is holding humanity in poverty and keeping nations impoverished. And that was what the Soviet Union was about. If you read The Foundations of Leninism by Stalin, if you read the documents of the Baku Congress of the Peoples of the East, if you read what was written, the proclamations, the Soviet Union, it came out of Marxism, but it had its own interpretation of Marxism. It said imperialism is the enemy. We're fighting against this Western system. And even in their own country, Vladimir Lenin said, communism is Soviet power plus electrification. That is a direct quote. Communism is Soviet power plus electrification. Our popular government taking control of electrification, modern technology, that's how we will build communism. Communism is Soviet power plus electrification. That's what they said. That if we can have a popular government fighting against imperialism, take control of electricity and modern industry, and develop our technology and build our country up, that's what we think communism is. Communism is not everyone being equal. communism's not, where, every business is a cooperative. No, communism is Soviet power plus electrification, meaning that as we've broken out of imperialism, we have our Soviet government, and we put that Soviet government presided over a big modern economy where we lift the people out of poverty. That's what we're doing. And after the death of Lenin, Stalin came to power in the Soviet Union. And the year of 1928 was a turning point because there was a lot of confusion in the Soviet Union about what they wanted to do. Trotsky wanted permanent revolution. Trotsky was never really an adherent of the Bolshevik understanding. He didn't really think the enemy was imperialism. He was still hoping for Western Marxism to take root. He thought that the workers of the West would seize their factories. He said the Soviet Union should only be a temporary holdout to spread permanent revolution and chaos all over the world. But Stalin ascended to power, and Stalin's position was, we will build socialism in one country. And in 1928, Stalin defeated Bukharin and the right opposition, and Stalin defeated Trotsky and the left opposition. And they launched the 5-year economic plans. And with the 5-year economic plans, they turned the Soviet Union into an industrial powerhouse. And the Soviet Union went from being one of the poorest, backward agrarian economies in the world to being an industrial superpower, to being a country that had wiped out illiteracy, to being a country with the world's largest power plants, the world's largest steel industry. He mobilized the population to build. And the Soviet Union, in just a few short years, became a modern industrial country. The 5-year economic plans. And the whole world marveled about what the Soviet Union was doing. No country had ever rapidly industrialized as quickly as the Soviet Union had. The Soviet Union went from being a third world country to being a modern industrial superpower in just a few short years. And the whole world marveled at it. And every time I bring this up, people say to me, well, but there was a famine in Ukraine, Caleb. That doesn't count. Oh, Stalin was authoritarian. People were put in gulags, so that doesn't count. Well, you know what? If that doesn't count, then nothing the West has ever done counts. Because you could not have had the West industrialized through a process of hundreds of years of colonialism. The reason that France and Britain and America became modern industrial countries is because millions of people were dragged from Africa as slaves. Millions of people were killed, Native Americans killed. Millions of people were colonized and murdered in the Congo. I mean, it was hundreds of years of killing people all over the world and stealing their wealth and stealing their labor and enslaving them and stealing their resources over the process of hundreds of years that created enough wealth for America and Britain and France to dominate the world. Hundreds of years of killing people through the process of colonialism that made the West what it is. And China and the Soviet Union, they built themselves up rather quickly. And they didn't colonize anybody in the process. Was there a famine along the way? Yes. There was the Great Leap Forward in China. Yes. There was a famine in Ukraine. But there was no colonialism. There wasn't hundreds of years of mass genocide and killing to make it happen. There was simply an anti-colonial revolution and the rise of an anti-imperialist government. And that as a result of the Soviet Union, the world changed. And in the 20th century, there was a movement that changed the world like nothing you have ever seen. There was a movement that touched the lives of so many people. I've told this story before. In my little town, I grew up in Orrville, Ohio. Orrville, Ohio is the little town I grew up in. It's where Smucker's jelly is made. And I remember my high school history teacher, he liked to go into the microfilm and look into the newspaper archives of my little town. And I remember he brought me a newspaper article from 1951 in my little town. And the headline was, "Take that, Uncle Joe. Take that, Uncle Joe." And what did it say? It said that a black family had bought a house in my little town. And that proved that what Stalin was saying, Stalin said America was a racist country. Well, it wasn't true. Take that, Uncle Joe. right? That even in my little town, they had to say America wasn't racist because Stalin, the Soviet Union, was supporting the Black Freedom Movement. And a few years later, Emmett Till was lynched and killed. And the Soviet Union blasted the image of Emmett Till's mutilated body all over the world. It showed the world what America does to black people. You know, do you have anyone in your family who was a steel worker or an auto worker or a meat packer or a truck driver? Why is it? They always talk about those good paying jobs that used to exist in America, those good paying jobs. Why were those jobs good paying? You go back to the 1920s, people in the steel mills made poverty wages. Why was it that steel workers, even up to today, the steel workers that are still around get really good pay? It's because communists, under the leadership of Stalin and a mass movement led by Stalin, built industrial unions. Read about the Little Steel Strike of 1937. Read about the Flint sit-down strike and the sit-down strike wave. That was communists. Communists occupied their factories. Communists built labor unions that fought in the streets. 1934 was a year that changed the course of America's history like no other. In the summer of 1934, there were real general strikes in three different cities. Minneapolis, San Francisco, and Toledo, Ohio. A state of emergency was declared in South Carolina because people were organizing. And they were organizing in alliance with 1/5 of the planet, the Soviet Union, that was aligned with their movement. And the Trade Union Unity League was organizing sharecroppers and textile workers in the South, and the Teamsters of Minneapolis, and the dock workers of San Francisco, and the auto light workers of Toledo, Ohio. There was a mass movement that existed centered around this anti-imperialist, anti-colonial government. And that movement defined the 20th century. And when the Second World War happened, 27 million people died defeating Hitler, and that the hammer sickle flag was flown over Berlin, and they defeated the Nazis. And after World War II, there was a wave of anti-colonial revolutions, and the people of the Middle East started rising up against imperialism. Abdul Nasser, the Arab socialist, took power in Egypt, and eventually the Soviet Union teamed up with the government of Egypt, and they built the Great Aswan Dam, and they electrified Egypt, an unprecedented thing. You had Ba'athist Arab socialism that arose. You had Gaddafi and the government of Libya that had the highest life expectancy on the African continent, an anti-colonial revolution. You had anti-colonial movements in Latin America, the Cuban Revolution. You had African socialism. You had, in Ghana, you had Kwame Nkrumah, who took power and started building and industrializing an African country. You had the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. There was this explosion across the world led by the weird spin-off of communism called Bolshevism, that was rooted in the struggle against revisionism, the struggle against social democracy. And that movement has changed the course of human history like you wouldn't believe. You look at what China used to be, and you look at what China is today. That was anti-revisionism that did that. That was Bolshevism. That was somebody who read Marx and said, Marx says it's the worker versus the boss. Well, actually, I have come up with a new theory, and I'm saying it's imperialism and globalist imperialism versus the oppressed and colonized people of the world, and I'm taking it in a whole new direction. That's the movement that made China what it is today. It's a whole new movement, and that's the reason we have good paying industrial jobs. That's the reason that there was a huge struggle against racism in America, and it gave a huge boost to the Black freedom struggle. Read about Paul Robeson. Right? It was this movement. And that Stalin, if you look at Stalin was not Trotsky. Stalin was not a Western Marxist. Stalin wasn't even like Lenin. He wasn't from the intellectual classes. Stalin was from a small town in Georgia, Gori. He was Georgian. He wasn't even Russian. His ethnicity was Georgian. He'd gone to seminary school to learn to be a priest. He was a seminary school dropout. And he was a mass organizer, and he built labor unions, and he built peasant associations, and he was the editor of a daily agitational newspaper called Pravda. And Stalin built a mass movement that was really the people of the land fighting back. When the people of the land are ravaged by the empires of the sea, among the people of the land emerges a land savior, emerges a messianic figure. This goes back for thousands of years, right? You read about the Roman Empire, when the Romans would conquer places on the African continent, places in Europe. Among the soil, among the people of the land would emerge messianic figures who would fight against them and would mobilize their people to defend their land and build up their land against the plunderers and the raiders. And that's what Stalin was. Stalin emerged from the soil of Russia. If it hadn't been Stalin, it would have been somebody else. And you didn't need Western Marxism to make it happen. You didn't need the correct interpretation of the dialectic. It would have happened one way or another. That from the soil, the civilization of the land, the people of the land create a leadership and a movement to drive out the colonizer and the raiders of the sea. And that this goes back thousands of years. You can see that when the thalassocracy, the empires of the sea, besiege the land, on the land, messianic figures, great kings, great warriors emerge. And this is a natural process. And sometimes they fail, sometimes they succeed, but this is something that will naturally happen. And that Stalin was the result of what had happened, what the British Empire started doing in the 1700s and the 1800s. You know, we're always given this body count for communism, right? They say communism killed all these people. Where's the body count for the British Empire? The British Empire killed at least 15% of the people of Ireland with man-made famines and land seizures, right? You read about what they did. The British Empire starved and slaughtered people all across the African continent. How many man-made famines were there in India so the British could extract more wealth and keep the people of India impoverished? How many people died in the Opium War, where the British took control of China's economy and prevented China from developing? How many people died in the Second Opium War, where they did it again and they subjugated the people of China with narcotics and prevented China from developing its own industries, kept this great civilization in poverty? Right? China, that 5,000-year-old civilization, the land of Confucius, was kept in poverty and drug addicted and destroyed by the British Empire. What the empires of the sea, what the raiders of the sea, the colonizers and the imperialists had been doing for hundreds of years, from the time that colonialism got started with the Spanish all the way up until 1917, year after year, they had been killing people and impoverishing people and slaughtering people. And out of that chaos, a civilization of the land emerged, and you got Stalin. And later you got Mao Zedong. And they broke their countries free. And they industrialized and made their countries modern countries without colonizing anybody. Whatever you want to say about a famine in Ukraine, whatever you want to say about gulags, it didn't take hundreds of years of colonialism. It didn't take the transatlantic slave trade in the Middle Passage. It didn't take killing hundreds of millions of native people. It didn't take going to the other side of the world, plundering all their wealth and impoverishing the people and bringing them back as slaves. Russia and China built themselves up by their own strength, by breaking out of the Western globalist imperialist system. They had anti-colonial revolutions, and they took control of their economies, and they built something. And what they built does not fit the classical categories, right? It's not left, it's not right, right? You can say it's left in the sense that Marxism was the ideology, in the sense that women had the right to vote, but you could say it's conservative as well, right? That the Soviet Union was a very military society. The Soviet Union was a very, very authoritarian society. The Soviet Union was a society in which people were taught they had a loyalty to their country and to their homeland. The Soviet family was glorified. Abortion was outlawed under Stalin. Homosexuality was not tolerated. Neither was pornography. The civilizations that emerged as a result of the anti-colonial revolutions. I'm talking about North Korea. I'm talking about the Islamic Republic of Iran. I'm talking about Gaddafi's Libya. I'm talking about Cuba. I'm talking about Nicaragua. I'm talking about the various anti-colonial movements that have existed. Vietnam, they don't fit any category. They're not Western. They're not Western conservatives. They're not Western leftists. They're their own thing. And they started out with Marxism, Leninism as their ideology, but they've even shifted beyond that with the rise of Deng Xiaoping theory, with the rise of Shia Islamic teachings, right? With the rise of all kinds of traditional ideas. The anti-colonial world, the new world that is broken out of imperialism, is something completely different. And the Western left doesn't understand it because it's not them. It is not them. It was formed in opposition to them. The entire history of Lenin and the entire movement of Bolshevism was a repudiation of AOC, was a repudiation of Bernie Sanders, was a repudiation of your Marxist college professor who talks about the workers and the bosses and we're going to divide up everyone will be paid equally and income inequality. It was a repudiation of that. Right, it was a repudiation of the cosmopolitan bohemian left, and it was nations that had been oppressed by international bankers breaking out of that system and building something new and exciting. And that movement defined the 20th century, and that movement was largely led by Stalin. Stalin was the symbol of that movement. Stalin, the seminary school dropout. Stalin, the Marxist. Stalin, the labor organizer. Stalin, the editor of Pravda. Stalin, Country Joe, right? Stalin was the leader of a movement that built a new economy, that built a new world. And after the death of Stalin, there was a power struggle in the Soviet Union. And Khrushchev took power. And Khrushchev, in order to solidify his own position and in order to accommodate with the West, attacked Stalin in the 1956 secret speech. He announced that Stalin was just as bad as the West had said, that he was a dictator, that he was self-serving. He gave this tirade against Stalin, and that led to a wave of demoralization and confusion. And out of that confusion, China and the Soviet Union parted ways. And it was out of that movement, out of that moment, there were a layer of people who rejected Khrushchev's secret speech. And they called themselves anti-revisionists. Anti-revisionists. They maintained that what Stalin had built, this mass movement that had defeated Hitler, that had invented space travel, that had changed the course of human history, that movement should be preserved. And they saw what Khrushchev was doing as watering down and wiping that movement away. And really what Khrushchev was doing was he took the global communist movement and accommodated it to Western social democracy. Because the liberals and the social democrats wanted to de-escalate the arms race, Khrushchev very much oriented the global communist movement with his doctrine of the three peacefuls to become a wing of Western liberalism, a wing of social democracy. And that is largely what Khrushchev did. It was one thing, it was a tactic to align with Roosevelt. It was a tactic to align with the British Labour Party against Hitler. But Khrushchev took what had sometimes been used as a tactic by Stalin, and he made it a rule that you always fight the right wing, right? Fight the right wing. You always fight the right wing. And that the Democrats are better, and that we're just trying to fulfill the ideals of social democracy and Western liberalism. Khrushchev watered down the global communist movement in the hopes of securing his own position. That was Khrushchev's revisionism. And in response to Khrushchev, you had a wing of global communism that called itself anti-revisionist and first aligned with China and later Albania. And they were trying to say, no, we want to hold on to what Stalin did. That movement that Stalin built, that movement that raised the Soviet Union up from nothing, that movement that made China a modern country, that movement that it was like nothing you'd ever seen before. And it was not tailism. It was structure. It was community organizations. It was anti-fascist associations. It was structures that had been built. This structure, this gigantic structure called the Soviet Union, 1/5 of the planet, that was sponsoring structures all over the world. Community associations, peasant associations, labor unions, mass movements all over the world, civil society that had a whole millions of people that took direction from it. That movement was a movement that Khrushchev started watering down into nothing and making a wing of the left, of the Western imperialist left, and watering it down into nothing. And there was a layer of people aligned with China and Mao, aligned with Albania and other movements that tried to hold on to what Stalin was doing. They were called the New Communist Movement in America. And that's something we'll talk about on other streams. I've written about it, etc. And they were attempting to build a real movement. And that the only thing that is going to make anything better right now is the building of a real anti-colonial movement, a real anti-colonial movement. Tailism, right? What if, let's just throw this out there. What if tomorrow ICE was abolished? The US Congress passed a law abolishing ICE, and Donald Trump was impeached for ICE and its heavy-handed tactics. How would things get better? How would that make anything better in America right now? Right? Let's say that this anti-ICE movement that's being sponsored by CNN, that all the trendy liberals are doing, would that result in the roads being paved in your neighborhood? Would that have good paying jobs for the people in your community? Would that resolve the economic crisis? We'd be less likely to have World War III with Russia and China to defend imperialism? Would the economic crisis hanging over our heads be resolved? Would anything get better? Would anything get better as a result of this? Let's say it happened, right? So now we abolish ICE, we abolish Trump, we got a Democrat in office, and now instead of ICE terrorizing people, the FBI goes back to terrorizing people, like Scott Ritter, like the Uhuru movement, like the Center for Political Innovation. The FBI is terrorizing people, and I mean, how there's nothing for us to gain. That doesn't mean we're not opposed to what ICE is doing. But let me tell you this: there are a lot of people now, and I see them, people who claim to be anti-imperialists, claim to be anti-imperialists. And I look at it. I look at them, and if they had been building a real organization and building up a real community of people and teaching real anti-imperialism instead of tailing after whatever's trendy, we would be in a very different situation as a country, right? Show me one hands-off Venezuela demonstration that didn't have anti-Trump liberal crap stapled to it. Show me one. Show me one hands-off Venezuela rally. Well, the only one I can think of is the ones that we've done. When the No Kings rallies happened around the country, we disrupted those rallies to say hands-off Venezuela. And we went to the gates of the jail where Maduro was being held. And we went to the gates of the jail to demand freedom for Maduro. The Democrats don't need our help protesting ICE. And if we're real anti-imperialists, we shouldn't be wasting our time doing what the Democrats are doing. Doesn't mean they're not right. It doesn't mean what ICE is doing isn't wrong, but it's not productive. It doesn't help build an anti-imperialist movement. We are the true anti-revisionists. We're the only anti-revisionists. Everybody else, what is everybody else doing? Everybody else is, the Democrats are saying abolish ICE. Abolish ICE. And they're following the Democratic Party. They've liquidated into social democracy. They've liquidated into a wing of imperialism. The whole point of what the Soviet Union did, the whole point of what China did was not doing that. We are the anti-revisionists. And part of what strengthens our anti-revisionism is the fact that we don't have simply a Marxist understanding of what Stalin did. If we were trying to just, and there's a lot of people who do that, who think they can understand Stalin in terms of Marxism. You can't. There's something spiritual about what Stalin was doing, right? When I talk about geopolitics and the people of the land and the empires of the sea, when you talk about Sigmund Freud and the superego, you can read Julius Evola and the organic state. There's something spiritual that Stalin was doing, the movement that Stalin was building. I'll tell you this, I've sensed it. All right. I am somebody who's been in Russian President Vladimir Putin's presence. I'm someone who has sat down with Ibrahim Raisi, the president of Iran. I've been in the same room. I was at an event with the supreme leader, Khamenei, of Iran. I've been to central Caracas, to the communes that have been created there. I can sense it. There is something spiritual and powerful about anti-imperialism. That the people of the land, when the people of the land come together and resist and fight back, right? There is something spiritual about what they are doing. This Western system that is all about individualism, that says there is no truth, there is no God, there's nothing worth living for. Human beings are a cancer on the earth. You know, that system that just drives everything beautiful away and reduces everything to money. That system that preaches just utter contempt for humanity. There is a repudiation of that. If you go to Venezuela, you'll feel it. You go to Iran, you'll feel it, right? You go to Russia, you sit in the same room as President Putin. You sit in China and you see what they've done. I've been to China and I've seen in China what they've done. If you'll see it. There's something very, very spiritual about the struggle against globalism and imperialism. It is a struggle for everything good about humanity. It is a struggle to drive the money changers out of the temple. It is a struggle for the very essence and celebration of humanity itself. We're innovationists because we understand that we need a government that invests in people and in communities, a government that pours into communities and unleashes human creativity and brilliance, a government that facilitates the economy to enable economic growth and expansion, right? That's what we need. We need that. And that we have a completely irrational system where poverty is created by abundance, right? And that's what we need, is we need a government of action that'll fight for working families. We need a real anti-colonial movement. And if all the people who claim to support Venezuela, claim to support Iran, claim to support Russia and China, who've been running around tailing after, oh, abolish ICE, whoa, Rachel Maddow, whatever she's saying, that's what I think. If they've been building real movements, if they've done what Chairman O'Malley of the Uhuru movement has done and built a real anti-colonial movement in communities that was serving people, we'd be in a very different situation right now. Tailing after liberals, chasing after whatever the latest thing is, trying to help the social imperialists and the social democrats get the upper hand over the more conservative capitalists. It's not what we should be doing. Maybe there would be a time like the late 1930s where some kind of popular front alliance would be made. But that's not the time we're in. And yes, we can be angry at what ICE is doing. And yes, we can say it's wrong, but it's also wrong what the FBI did to the Uhuru movement, which none of these people cared about. None of these people cared about. A group of black socialists had their homes raided by the FBI, and none of the people that are suddenly outraged, oh, CNN said ICE is bad. Well, you know, none of them did anything for the Uhuru movement. None of them did anything when Obama bombed and destroyed Libya. None of, I mean, I'm sorry. Our job is not to just tail after whatever's trendy. And that the people leading the Stop Trump movement is not going to lead to anything that will weaken imperialism. It's just not going to happen. There's nothing that'll happen about it. There's nothing good that will come out of this. That doesn't mean they're not right. It doesn't mean that what ICE is doing is good. It certainly isn't good. There is nothing that will come out of anti-imperialists throwing their forces and their resources into the latest CNN, MSNBC crusade, to drive out Trump because he's Hitler. Clearly he's Hitler. I mean, he wants to negotiate with Russia and Russia's evil. And, it's not worth our time, right? I mean, it's just not the best use of our time. We need to build a real organization. We're doing it, right? We went to the gates of the jail where Maduro was being held. We're doing it, right? We were in the streets like nobody else. Watch the CPI end of the year video. We're actually building a real movement. That's what needs to happen, not screaming and echoing CNN about the anti-ICE thing, right? We have to educate people about anti-imperialism. We have to build networks of people that can carry out anti-imperialist operations, right? We don't need to join a liberal crusade to make imperialism work better. We don't need to help secure the upper hand of the Democrat Party and the Anglo-American establishment. Look, what's going on right now is deep state versus deep state, right? Why do you think that of all the countries in the world, Somalia, on the Horn of Africa, right next to Yemen, right next to the Middle East, why do you think a bunch of people from there have moved to some city in the Midwest of the United States? Why? Well, they just all wanted to move there, Caleb. It was just random. You think it's random? You think the USA hasn't been carrying out drone strikes and military operations in that country for a long time? Did you not just notice Israel declaring Somaliland to be independent? Did you not notice Yemen becoming a hotbed of anti-imperialism and the USA trying to set up shop to stop the Houthis and control the Red Sea? And decade after decade, folks from Somalia have been moving to Minneapolis. Now, I'm not against people from Somalia. I don't hate people on the but do you think that they're all being given visas randomly? Right. And, do you think the fact that all kinds of government funded projects that were, pilfering tax money and all of that, the Leering Center, you think that all that being set up was an accident? There's intelligence stuff going on here, folks. This is the deep state, the American imperialist state fighting with itself. Right. And sometimes there might be a wing of the deep state that we want to boost and support, and other times not. And I look at this. I don't want to support ICE. I'm not supporting ICE, but I look at the people running the anti-ICE protests, and I don't want to support them either. We're not going to get a better deal with them. We're not going to get a better deal with them. We have to teach anti-imperialism. We have to build an anti-imperialist apparatus, right? We have to build a network, a community of people that are committed to anti-imperialism. We need to set up shop in a community and start providing services. We need to build a real anti-imperialist movement. That's the only way out of this, right? That's the only way out of this. And, either take it or leave it. But we gain nothing. Nothing is gained for anti-imperialism by tailism. We have to build a real movement. We are the true anti-revisionists. We are saying that what existed at the time of the Soviet Union, what exists today in Yemen, what exists today around the world, this global anti-colonial movement, that's the future. And that we have to build, and that tailing after the liberals and echoing whatever the liberals are doing is not enough. We have to build a real movement. We are the true anti-revisionists. Other people are yapping and talking and chasing after and tailing whatever the liberals are doing. We're building. So build with us or don't. Build with us or don't. So yeah, that's my message for tonight. I hope that you enjoyed it. I've got a lot of questions to answer in the second half of the show. So before we do the roll call, I just want to show you all, we went to the jail where Maduro is being held. We actually went to the jail the day before our CPI event that we had in New Jersey. We went to the jail and it was great. It was great. And we raised an anti-colonial, anti-imperialist message outside the jail where Maduro is being held. It was absolutely tremendous that we did that. And so I'm going to put that video on. And then after that, we'll do the roll call. And I'll start answering people's questions. And there's plenty to talk about, so Yeah, I see people like, yeah, actually liberals support oh yeah, right. There's a lot of desperation, right? It's really scary to stand out in the crowd, right? I know you want to fit in. I'm not in this to fit in. I'm in this to give you answers, right? And I see a lot of coping in the chat of people that they just want to be on the same team as Rachel Maddow. They don't want to stand out. And I mean, that's why I said it's not for everybody, right? But we have to build a real movement, and you don't build a real movement by repeating and echoing the liberals. You just don't. And, we need to build a real movement, and there you go.
All right, guys, get out. This will be our corner. The federal facility where Maduro is being held is right over there.
Free Maduro! Free Maduro! No more bombs! No more bombs! No more bombs!
No more bombs!
Maduro! Free Maduro! Tax dollars need to be sent in the USA, not in another country. Stop wasting our tax dollars to a country that has nothing to do with us. We don't want to deal with this.
And as a result, the international bankers and Wall Street and the imperialists have kidnapped him. And he is now inside this facility. This is absolutely unacceptable. He should be in Venezuela leading his people. And America and Venezuela shouldn't be fighting. They should be friends. We should have trade, international friendship. Maduro is not our enemy. Our enemy is the big corporations and banks that have been destroying the lives of American working families and getting us into war after war after war. These wars don't do anything for the American people. They benefit international bankers and Wall Street, but they do not benefit the American people. We need, in this country, a leader like Maduro that'll stand up to the international bankers, stand up to Wall Street. That's what we need. Free Maduro and learn from Maduro as a great example of an anti-colonial fighter. That's what we need to do. We are the Center for Political Innovation, and we're out here to say free Maduro, peace and trade with Venezuela, no new wars, no police state, hands off Venezuela, free Maduro. That's what we're out here to say.
Maduro is not our enemy.
Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. We are here because there are multiple wars going on right now. We're tired of Ukraine intervention. We're tired of the genocide, killing innocent children in Palestine. It makes us cry at night. It makes us angry. We need to realize what if that was your own children? What if that was your own family? It's the same thing with Venezuela. It's going to be Iran. All this money in life.
The Metropolitan Detention Center, where the hope of Latin America is being locked up right now. And let's make no bones about why Nicolas Maduro has been locked up. They tell us in American media, oh, Nicolas Maduro is a drug dealer. We know who the real drug dealers are in America. That's right. We know it was the pharmaceutical companies who pushed opioids on American citizens.
There's a homeless crisis in our country. There's so much going on in the USA, yet we're like looking at Venezuela. What does that have to do with us? Tell me. Nothing. We had to do America first. Trump is not doing America first. He promised that.
That's
right. Is he doing that?
No.
He's not doing that. He's doing America last.
That's right.
He's not doing America first. Like he promised, right?
The reality is that Venezuela has helped its own people. The Venezuelan government has lifted millions of people out of poverty, and it's also helped the American people. When Americans in New York were cold, Venezuela provided heating oil for free to us Americans. Well, how do our authorities repay him?
It was Marco Rubio and his family who were pushing drugs in the United States. It was the cartels that the U.S. government and the CIA pays to sell drugs in America. Those are the real drug dealers. It's not Nicolas Maduro. The reason why they're going after Nicolas Maduro is because he brought jobs to Venezuela. He brought development to Venezuela. He brought education to Venezuela.
Frente a la prisión imperial donde está detenida y encarcelado el presidente de Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro. Nosotros aquí vamos a pronunciar una oración por la libertad del presidente Nicolás Maduro. Padre Celestial, por favor, cuida la integridad física del presidente Nicolás Maduro y de su esposa, la doctora Silvia Flores. El pueblo de Estados Unidos apoya tu libertad. Nosotros estamos en solidaridad con el pueblo bolivariano de Venezuela. Nosotros nos oponemos a los dictados imperiales.
If I can't have it, no one can. No, everybody can have natural resources and oil. Everybody can have a prosperous future. That's what we are trying to stand for here in the Center for Political Innovation. And that's what they don't want you to hear. They don't want you to win. They want you to be stuck, pessimistic, and hopeless. Yeah, dare to struggle, dare to win.
Dare to struggle, dare to win. Dare to struggle, dare to win.
To the CIA that have been smuggling drugs into this country for years, Nicolas Maduro is the leader of Venezuela, and he has led his people to try and be independent and stand up for justice. It's absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. We are out here to say free Maduro, and lock up the bankers, lock up Wall Street, and free Maduro, 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 free Maduro.
¡Libertad para Maduro! ¡Free Maduro now! ¡Free Maduro now!
We are here to stand with the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, who was taken unlawfully from his home, from his country, from his people. How is this a thing? How are we now kidnapping leaders of countries? Is this something we want to be known for in America? No.
He knows we're in Ukraine and we're genociding children and women and people in Palestine, and we're not doing anything to stop it. Well, if it just starts with a few of us, then it starts with a few of us. And Nicholas, if you and your wife can hear us, we love you, and we are here from all around the United States because we support you, brother. You need to be out here now. This is inexcusable for the United States government. I am not happy with my government. I love the American people. I love what this country is about. But our government is a huge, huge disappointment. To many of us that have had to live our entire lives, either poor or lower middle class, while a handful of people have everything they want every single second of every day. It's not necessary. There's abundance for everyone, but we have to let it happen. God bless you, Maduro. We love you. Free Maduro now! Free Maduro now! Free Maduro now!
Yeah, please tweet out that video, by the way, if you get a chance, right? I will put the link in the chat. You know, we actually went to the gates. We are the only people. There's been a few like permitted rallies, like little, rallies with permits that have happened near there. We're the only group that has actually gone right to the gate of the jail. We went to the back entrance. We are the only group that has brought our message right to the gate. And we did that the day before our big event in New Jersey. We're really doing it. And again, this is what people should be doing, right? Just joining the liberals, their latest, anti-ICE, thing. It's not helpful, right? We need to build a real movement. right? We are building a real movement of anti-imperialists at the Center for Political Innovation. And that's the only thing that's going to make any of this any better. Chairman O'Malley, from the African People's Socialist Party, he said roughly the same thing, right? That we got to just build a real anti-colonial movement, and all this distraction is not helping. Please retweet that tweet, send it to everybody, send that video to everybody. We're building a real movement, and if all these people that claim to be anti-imperialists that just engage in endless tailism were doing what we were doing, things would be different, right? And that now is not the time to just echo CNN, But anyway, so let's do the roll call, and then I'll start answering people's questions. And if you have a question for the second half, buy me a coffee. Caleb Maupin is the best way to send it. Carter sent a question. I'm going to answer that. It's on the list. But names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Rose says, free Maduro. Iran stays strong. Absolutely. Absolutely. Names and locations. Diana in Orlando, Florida. Shout out to Diana. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. JT24 in Mississippi. Charleston, South Carolina. Very, very good. Names and locations. Carter in Minnesota. Good to see you. Jenny, covered in snow in Cincinnati. We're about to be covered snow in here in New York. Auckland in New Zealand. Yeah, buddies. All right. Very good. Oldman Barker. John in Florida. Blessings. Stay safe. Mariah in North Carolina. Thank you, Mariah. Yeah, Alex in Brazil. Alex in Brazil is with us. Good to have you. Good to have you. Ellie in Chicago is with us. Bill in Tasmania. St. David's, Bermuda. Caleb, we have sent you healing. Please drink water and have a beautiful weekend. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm over my flu at this point, but it took a while. Season Noob in China, Scott in Pennsylvania, Gabby in Chicago. Good to see you, Gabby. We have a great community of people. Ian in the Yukon, Dustin in Colorado. Shout out to you, Dustin. Good to see you. Good to see you. We got a great group of people. We got a really, really great group of people. Mark your calendars for this summer. We're going to be having our gathering. Join the Center for Political Innovation. Robert in New Jersey. Check out his YouTube channel, by the way. He's got a great YouTube channel. He's having, Twitter Spaces, X Spaces. They're really great. Ian in Chester in England. Good to see you. Caleb in NYC. How did you know, Carter? Here I am. Hey, Lane. Ian in England. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. We are doing something really, really amazing, right? And the Center for Political Innovation, we are building the kind of movement that could put a stop to this. And, Kim in Ontario. Good to see you, Kim. I hope you enjoyed this. Samara in Pennsylvania. Good to see you. Good to see you. David Fox out in Australia. Good to see you. We got such a good group of people. We really, really do. And we saw that. I mean, our event that we had was really, really great. I'll just quickly show you the very quick, short video. This is like just the quick summary video of what we did, and then I'll start answering questions. But yeah, this was our event in New Jersey.
The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with our ballot in our hands? God gave the land to the people. For freedom, boys, and send it far and wide. March along to victory, for God is on our side. While the voice of nature thunders o'er the rising tide, God gave the land for the people. The land was God who made the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hands? Gave the land to the people. Hark, the shout is swelling from the east and from the west. Why should we beg further? Let the landlords take the best. Make them pay their taxes, or the land will respect the rest. The land was meant for the people. The land was God who gave the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. The banner has been raised on high and face the battle din. The army now is marching on the struggle to begin. We'll never cease our efforts till the victory we win. And the
We are people of the land. America can be a civilization of the land. We can drive out thalassocracy. We can drive out imperialism and the empires of the sea. We can take control of our soil, and we can build up and invest in our people. We are people of the land, and we are fighting back. Go and read my book on the Houthis, the book that we've distributed in bulk, explaining who the people of Ansar Allah are, people of the land. Stalin from Georgia, Country Joe, Mao Zedong from the countryside. We are people of the land. We are Ibrahim Traore, right? We are a people of the land, and we are against the empires of the sea. We are against colonialism and British imperialism. We are against globalism and monopolistic capitalism. We are pro-growth and pro-humanity. We are people of the land, and we will win. The bankers and imperialists and colonizers, the exploiters and the globalists will be defeated, and humanity and our creative ability to love one another and build and construct and advance and build a more prosperous abundance for all will prevail. God is the creator of all things, and like God, we have been gifted with the spark of human creativity, the ability to reinvent our relationship with nature, to expand our population, to expand our living standard, to extend our life expectancy. No species has ever done what humanity has done. There is something special about humanity, and they want us to hate humanity. They want us to believe that humanity is a cancer upon the earth. They want us to believe we're overpopulated. They want us to believe there's no hope. They want us to be suicidal. They want us to not wake up in the morning. They want us to think humanity is a curse, that there is no future. We reject that. We are optimistic. We are people of the land fighting back against the colonizers, against the imperialists, against globalism, against the English system, against thalassocracy, against the civilizations and the raiders of the sea. We are people of the land fighting back and celebrating our God-given human creative power. That is what we are. We are the Russian Revolution. We are the Chinese Revolution, right? We are Julius Caesar in his struggle against the wealthy Roman senators. We are Spartacus in the slave revolt. We are Abraham Lincoln in the struggle to defeat slavery. We are every progressive struggle that has ever existed. That's us. That is us. And humanity will lift its head up high. Thalassocracy, globalism, imperialism, the cosmopolitan international bankers that are destroying our homeland and destroying our country, that are causing the roads to be crumbling while they spend more and more money on wars, that have gotten our children addicted to opioids. The cosmopolitan international banker system, globalism, imperialism, monopolistic capitalism, the international financial oligarchy will be defeated, and humanity will lift its head high. The people of the land are fighting back, and humanity will prevail. Dare to struggle, dare to win. I am not here to preach hate. I am not here to preach pessimism. I am not here to get you to hate your neighbor. I am not here to get you to out-wokeify your neighbor. I am not here to preach ethnic, religious bigotry of any kind. I am here to tell you that you have something beautiful within your soul, and that you deserve love, and you deserve to be celebrated and cherished. You are not a cockroach. You are not a cancer. You are not a pest. You are beautiful, and you have something beautiful within your soul that should be celebrated, and you should be lifted up to be something beautiful. I believe that you are something beautiful, and that we need a society that sees you as a seed that can be planted and cultivated and grown into a beautiful flower. That's what we urgently need. We need a society that invests in humanity, that invests in the next generation, that allows human creativity and innovation to flourish. Long live innovationism. Long live innovationism. Long live the city building tendency. Long live what only our movement and only the Center for Political Innovation has to offer. None of these fake communists can touch us. Not with a 10-foot pole, not with a 12-foot pole. All these people talking about dialectical materialism and trying to LARP the 20th century. Only we can offer this. All the fakers and all the haters and all the woke tailors, they can't touch us with a 10-foot pole. And no matter what they throw at us, we keep coming back stronger. We are building the community based on love and solidarity and anti-imperialism. And we are looking to Eurasia, to Russia, to China, to Ibrahim Traore in the Union of Sahel States. We are looking at the beauty that they are building outside of imperialism, outside of colonialism, building themselves up. Soviet power plus electrification. Socialism is not poverty, but to be rich, for all of humanity to be rich is glorious. That's who we are. That is our movement. We will not be defeated. We are driven by love for humanity. We are driven by optimism and faith in the human spirit, and we will not surrender. Dare to struggle, dare to win. That's us. That's us. And do not doubt for a minute that we are the ones who have been chosen to lead humanity out of the darkness and lead America, this so important country, this country between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, to lead this country towards something beautiful, to lead everyone that we see in our daily lives out of the darkness and the hopelessness that's being churned out and toward the hope and the vision of a new world that we desperately need. We are the anti-revisionists. We are the anti-colonialists. We are the innovationist movement. We carry with us the flame of anti-colonialism and the flame of the movement that has done so much for humanity. We carry the torch. We carry the torch. And if you're still playing communist and trying to reenact the 20th century, if you're preaching hate, if you're preaching woke, you're left behind, because we are doing it. We are the movement that this country needs. We are the ones you have been waiting for. We arose from the soil of America as America was besieged by colonialism and imperialism, as the glorious struggle to defeat slavery and the glorious labor movement and the glorious anti-war struggles, as so many progressive movements in American history have been suppressed, as they've tried to erase them from our history, and they've tried to distort them with their toxic woke distortions, as they've tried to stifle it. From the soil of America has risen innovationism. We are the true expression of the American spirit, the American dream. Work hard, achieve, build, and construct a new society, a new world, a new life, a better life for the next generation. We are the American dream. We are the American dream that doesn't come from slavery, the American dream that doesn't come from colonialism, the American dream that doesn't come from tearing somebody else down, but from building all of us up. That's what we are. We are America's beauty concentrated into a movement. We are innovationists. We are optimists. We are constructive. We are the city building tendency. And you can join us and be part of our movement, or you can be left behind. But I'm not here to play games. I'm not here to be silly. I am here to give you and tell you what we need to hear, what you need to hear. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Our movement will prevail. And I've got some questions to answer. Look, if you want to understand the ruling class fighting with each other, I got What is Bonapartism? I took some of my bigger books and made them into like little pamphlets, right? What is Bonapartism? Explaining the Marxist concept. You can learn all about it, how the ruling class fight with each other, how they become more authoritarian, etc. But anyway, if you got any more questions for me to answer, the best way to send them is to buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee is the best way to send your questions. Buy me a coffee. You can also do Rumble rants. I see there's a few Rumble rants that have come in. You can also Cash App me, Caleb Maupin 22 on the Cash App. But yeah, that's how you can send your questions. So let's start answering people's questions. So, it's been a while since I've been on. Richard, he said, I noticed that Marjorie, to a pretty large extent, and Tucker, to a decent extent, have actually winded down their anti-communism due to being close to Code Pink. And like Tucker, he still says stuff that makes sense, like dumb wars and etc. I noticed Candace needs to read, from beyond being a Franco apologist, etc. And he's asking me about dissident MAGA. Look, dissident MAGA is the most important constituency in America right now. they're important because they're not leftists, right? They're not under the control of the left. The left is completely controlled, right? The left is completely controlled. The leftist groups, don't even get me started. I don't even need to tell you about how controlled they are. And the bulk of the MAGA movement is blindly pro-Israel, blindly supporting kidnapping Maduro, etc. But there's a layer of people that take the message of the MAGA movement seriously, that want a more prosperous America, that don't want these wars. And they listened to Tucker Carlson and they heard his interview with Russian President Putin. They listened to Marjorie Taylor Greene and what she's exposed about the Israel lobby and Jeffrey Epstein. And they're moving in a good direction, but they're lost. And I don't blame them. And one thing that we have to do, right, is we have to not have an emotional reaction to anti-communism, because communism is lost, right? Communism in America at this point means woke person. And I mean, if I thought that's what communism was, I would hate woke people too. And the Soviet Union is not coming back, my friends. It's not. China and socialism with Chinese characteristics, and, you know, the resistance economy of Iran and what Gaddafi did in Libya, it's different. And we understand what it is. We understand the nature of it and why it overcomes the irrationality of capitalism and the glut and the overproduction problem and how it's a struggle against imperialism. But when communism, most people think communism is everyone getting paid the same wage, which I don't know why they think that. People think communism is taxed equality or social they don't know what it is, right? And the woke people are what they think communism is. They don't like the woke people, but it's difficult. And we just have to get into these spaces and provide this education. No one else is going to do it. No one else is going to do it. I feel like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens, people like that are learning. They just don't know, right? I mean, who are they going to learn it from? PSL, right? They're going to learn it from the Communist Party USA? No, they got to learn it from us. We've got a job to do, and we're the only ones that can do the job. You know, and we need to find those dissident MAGA people. And that's really important, right? We need to get to the dissident MAGA and engage with them. And that's really important. We need to find a way to get into dissident MAGA spaces and engage with those people. And, you know, we're having internal conversations in CPI about this because, you know, that's the most important constituency. The left is controlled. The mainstream right is controlled, but there is an opening. We see an opening in the dissident MAGA circles. We need to go wherever the opening is. Wherever the opening is. All right. All right. Okay. William Chandler says, wow, Caleb, sir, hope you all had a great evening yesterday. I guess was going there for your hope. Productive. I was actually on my way to New Jersey and had an early start, but then got chilled camping in my car. Well, hey, Mr. Chandler, I hope you make it to our next event. You know, it sounds like you're doing great stuff, running for office, you know, on an anti-war platform. You know, we certainly admire that. And there's people in CPI who do that. Jeff Young runs for office in Kentucky a lot. We got other members that are running for office. We don't endorse any candidates. We don't campaign for anybody, but, you know, members of our organization like to pursue the electoral path, and we're not opposed to that. We just can't, for legal reasons, participate in any election activities, right? We're not a PAC. We're not something that campaigns for people. So we don't campaign for anybody. But our members, you know, and I think what Chandler is doing, running for office, I think that's a great thing to do. So there we go. Now Richard says, I know, he said that one already about Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? Okay. And then Richard says, I looked into the last three leaders the USA put on trial: Milosevic, Saddam Hussein, and Noriega. Now, Saddam, I believe, it was said he was a CIA puppet by certain people. I don't know how much that is true. It looks not meant to be the Ba'ath. Well, no, Saddam Hussein wasn't a CIA puppet. They used Saddam Hussein against Iran, right? Saddam was the leader of an anti-imperialist movement called Ba'athist Arab Socialism. Iran was, led by an anti-colonial movement in the name of Shia Islam. There's ethnic rivalry between Arabs and Persians that goes back very far. Ba'athist Arab Socialism is a secular ideology. Obviously, the Islamic Revolution of Iran is different. Is religious, and he was used against Iran, and there were internal struggles in Iraq. The Iraqi Communist Party was aligned with a president they had. I mean, what was the president? I don't remember his name, but they had a president who was kind of sympathetic to the Soviet Union, and then you had the Ba'ath Party that was more radical and wanted a more anti-imperialist approach. And Saddam was not America's best friend. Okay, the USA used Saddam Hussein to fight against Iran at one point, and they manipulated two anti-colonial groups against each other. And the USA in the early 80s was backing Saddam Hussein against Iran, and then later, the USA switched sides and was supporting Iran against Saddam Hussein. And Iran kind of pivoted in a pro-U.S. direction in the 90s because Saddam Hussein was considered the main threat. It's complicated, right? And that I think there were sincere anti-imperialists on both sides of that. But Ba'athist Arab socialism is for the Arab people. It's a nationalist movement of the Arab people, and it's secular. Whereas the Islamic Revolution of Iran, most Iranians are Persian, but you have Arabs in Iran, you have Kurds in Iran, you have Turkmen in Iran, you have different ethnicities, but Shia Islam was to unite them all. And so, they manipulated two anti-imperialist currents against each other. And they used both of those anti-imperialist movements against the communists, right? They considered the Soviet-aligned communists the main threat, right? The Tudeh party and the People's Fedayeen of Iran, there was a fear of them coming to power. And I think there were some sections of the American ruling class that preferred Khomeini to the communists, right? And Saddam Hussein, right? He was a Ba'athist, and there was a feeling that maybe, and he wasn't completely solidly in the Soviet camp. I mean, he seemed to pretty solidly sympathize with the Soviet Union, and he built a very much state-run economy in Iraq. But there were times he was against the Soviet Union on the U.S. side. So it's complicated. And this is the game that they play, manipulating different people against each other, the grand chessboard, et cetera. Now, Richard also asked about Noriega. Well, Noriega, this is something I've talked about a lot. Noriega was a military strongman in Panama who the USA built up and allowed to become the strongman of Panama against communism, right? They didn't want to have communism control the Panama Canal. And so they, in Latin America, Central America in the 80s was very much a place where there were a lot of, anti-imperialist movements like the Sandinistas and others. And so they built him up. But the way you maintain an authoritarian military dictatorship is you hand out the goods. You gotta do stuff. And he started building airports and providing services. And he was becoming a Bonapartist. He was independent, and he wasn't taking orders, right? The USA had allowed him to establish his military dictatorship, and then he was using it differently. And at the same time that George Soros was funding the color revolutions against the communists, they went after Marcos in the Philippines. They went after and they removed Pinochet in Chile. And Pinochet, had come into office and implemented very dramatic free market reforms. But then in the early 80s, he had started renationalizing things, and he started, doing things. And none of these military dictators, Park Chung-hee in South Korea, none of them could stay in power without engaging in development. And the USA was willing to tolerate that as a barrier against communism, but they didn't want that. And so George Soros kind of worked with the U.S. government to preside over bringing down both the Marxist-Leninist governments of the Eastern Bloc and these kind of military Bonapartist strongmen that were kind of a barrier against communism. And they brought in neoliberalism, and that the open society that George Soros advocates, right? It's the Open Society Institute. The Open Society is much better, easier to implement austerity, right? But if you have a strongman government, the only way that strongman government can stay in power is by handing out the goods. Noriega was doing that. And so the USA removed him because Panama, right, is very, very important. There's actually, I worked with Ramsey Clark. There's a film called The Panama Deception that goes into great detail about Noriega and what was going on there. And Noriega was a Bonapartist who had been pro-U.S. and anti-communist, who was becoming independent, and they removed him. And that again, we need to get past, right? There are all kinds of people around the world who call themselves communists that are completely worthless, right? And there are all kinds of people who don't call themselves communists that are great anti-imperialists. And again, why are we the real anti-revisionists? Because we are struggling against imperialism, right? The Shining Path of Peru. They didn't do anything good. There's a terrorist group that basically they waged a peasant war that was very ugly. They killed all kinds of people, and they laid the basis for a military dictatorship in Peru. You talk to any leftist or progressive trade unionist in Peru, they hate the Shining Path. The president of Peru, the kind of anti-imperialist president who was ousted in Peru, he believed that the Shining Path was a CIA group, but they called themselves communists. Oh boy, we should support them. Well, no, I don't support the Shining Path. I think the Shining Path of Peru, El Sendero Luminoso, was an abominable organization. Head choppers and murderers and bloodthirsty, it was just awful, right? I mean, there was just nothing good about them. They call themselves communists. I mean, whereas, Noriega, maybe he started out as an anti-communist, but then he started doing, industrializing. We got to get past this communism good, anti-communism bad, right? There's a lot of awful people in America who call themselves communists that I want nothing to do with, right? It's not about communism. It's about growth and anti-imperialism and moving beyond globalism and imperialism and the struggle against globalism and imperialism. It's not about people calling themselves communists. Look, the Marxist ideology has big problems with it. That dialectical worldview that says everything's about conflict and struggle, that rejects the spiritual aspect of mankind, says there's no God. That's a problem, right? And that, yes, the Soviet Union was able to industrialize and Stalin was able to do that. And we respect that. And we respect what China has done and all of that. But you to blindly follow the communist ideology, I think communism is good and anything that's anti-communist, it's hard for me. But, I'm at the point where I'm trying my hardest to not get offended by anti-communism. Because when people talk against communism, they're not talking against me. They don't understand what I believe, right? And a lot of people who call themselves communists are on the wrong side, right? Are on the wrong side. So, but yeah, Noriega was a Bonapartist. And then Milosevic was the leader of Yugoslavia. As Yugoslavia was breaking apart, Serbia was the last, of the Marxist government of Yugoslavia. And the USA invaded. And yeah, Milosevic was a communist, but there was also a really big emphasis on Orthodox Christianity. The Kosovo Liberation Army that was funded by the United States was Islamic and Wahhabi. And even the Serbia thing, right? He was a communist, but he was an Orthodox Christian, and they emphasized Orthodox Christianity. And there was this opposition from Albanian Muslims who were being funded by Saudi Arabia. So it's a complicated thing. But yeah, very, very interesting. Okay, now Gavin said, Lord Save Us by K Rhino. He requested a song. Okay, well, I generally don't do the song request thing, but we can do that. Lord Save Us by K Rhino. Is that going to get me in trouble though? Is that, can I play that, or is it like, I'm trying to see if it's on the internet, like different places. Can I get away with playing it on here? I just don't want to get like a copyright strike or something. I'm seeing it different places, so I think I can get away with it. All right, we'll give it a try. Hopefully we don't have an issue. Right? Lord Save Us by K Rhino. Okay. Let's see if we can get away with this. We'll give it a try. Gavin, you're a good guy, and hopefully there's no issue. So here we go. Let me put it in here, and it may be that they block it or something like that, but we'll put that on. I had another song I was going to play for you all as well, but I guess we're downloading the song that Gavin wanted. We don't generally do song requests. Now, Carter, while we're waiting for the song to request, Carter asked me about Eugene Dennis. So Eugene Dennis is a leader of the Communist Party of the United States, who was kind of the main spokesperson for the Communist Party during McCarthyism. He's a little bit younger than William Z. Foster. And he was, Foster had the kind of anti-revisionist faction. 1956, after Khrushchev's secret speech, the Communist Party USA divided into three factions, right? You had the John Gates faction that wanted to liquidate the Communist Party, that was against the Soviet Union entirely. And you had William Z. Foster, who was defending Stalin. And then you had this centrist faction led by Eugene Dennis and Gus Hall. And they were the ones that ultimately prevailed. Right. And they are the ones that, that had the centrist view. Eugene Dennis's wife, Peggy Dennis, quit the Communist Party. And she wrote a memoir of those years that is widely circulated, that I've quoted before. And her name is Peggy Dennis. He died of a heart attack, but his wife had his view, and then she left the Communist Party, I believe, in the the early 70s or the late 60s, like I think over Czechoslovakia. And then she wrote kind of a memoir about, the internal struggles in the Communist Party. But yeah, there was a three-way struggle after the Khrushchev secret speech. Eugene Dennis, he was a labor union guy. I believe he was of Eastern European descent, if I'm not mistaken. There's a famous clip of him going before the House Un-American Activities Committee, and them making a big deal that his name was not actually Eugene Dennis, right? That was not his name. Like, what is your name? And he says, Eugene Dennis. And they said, what's your real name? He says, that's my name. I pay taxes under that name. I'll see if I can find that clip, right? Eugene Dennis, right? It's kind of an amusing clip of him being questioned before the House Un-American Activities Committee. All right. So K Rhino. All right. Okay. So we'll put on Eugene Dennis and then we'll do K Rhino. And then after that, I'll take any more questions that people have. But yeah, so let's do Eugene Dennis. Okay. We'll do Eugene Dennis. We'll do the famous clip of him before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Then we'll do K Rhino, and I'll answer any other questions people have. Why not, right? So there we go. But yeah, just looking at things. We may get interrupted at some point. That happens. Sometimes you get interrupted. These things happen. They're not the end of the world. But hopefully not. Hopefully not. Okay. All right. Okay. So we'll put Eugene Dennis on, right? This is Eugene Dennis, who was like one of the main leaders of the Communist Party during the McCarthy years. This is when he went before the House Un-American Activities Committee. All right. Hold your horses. Okay. Doing that thing where we wait for it to show up on the screen. Oh, here we go. All right. Here we go.
Is that your real name, Mr. Dennis, or your party name?
Whether my name is Smith or Jones or Cohen, the testimony I'm about to give here is valid and the truth.
Mr. Chairman, we must know who the witness is. I ask him again to state his real name for the record.
You can identify me as Eugene Dennis. I have paid taxes under that name. I am known under that name, and I repeat, whatever name I am known by, I have never sullied the honor of the American people.
Mr. Chairman, it's necessary that the witness state his real name.
Mr. Chairman, the underling of this secretary does not dictate what I say or don't say. I am under oath and I am going to give the truthful answers to all questions.
Well, I contend, Mr. Chairman, that the committee cannot proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I object. This is irrelevant.
Mr. Dennis, you asked to be invited and you asked
That's right.
2 hours. Now we're going to give you 2 hours.
Thank you.
But first we would like to identify you,
Yes.
the same as we've identified the other witnesses.
I may be identified as Eugene Dennis.
Well, first, Mr. Chairman, he must state his name before we can proceed.
I am Eugene Dennis. I am known as Eugene Dennis. I pay taxes under the name of Eugene Dennis.
Mr. Chairman,
Passport of the name of Eugene Dennis?
That question, Mr. Thomas, is quite beside the point. Quite beside the point. I came here to present testimony. May I be privileged to present my testimony?
Every opportunity for those 2 hours.
Yes.
Even if we have to sit here all day.
Okay.
We'd like to identify you first.
I am.
whether he answers that question. he must first identify himself.
Who are you, please?
I am the chief investigator of the committee, Robert E. Stripling.
Oh, I see. You're a member of the old Dice Committee. That's right.
What is your name, Mr. Dennis?
I am Eugene Dennis.
Mr. Chairman, the committee has considerable testimony before it concerning the name under which Mr. Dennis was born, and we would therefore request that he give his right name.
All right, Mr. Chairman, let me answer. The color of my hair...
Yeah, that's Eugene Dennis. This is the book of all the statements that he put out during the McCarthy, during the House Un-American Activities, ideas they cannot jail. There's actually a statement he wrote against the founding of NATO called Smash the Atlantic Pact, which I thought was a pretty cool name. But yeah, this is the book of all of his writing. There's a lot of honoring Stalin and different things. I mean, this was 1950. This is published, and he was imprisoned, just like the other leaders of the Communist Party. And this is like a book with all of his statements in it. He was a heroic leader. He played kind of a centrist role, accommodating the revisionism of Khrushchev. He wasn't an anti-revisionist like Foster, but he played an important role at a time it was very, very tough to be an anti-imperialist in America during the McCarthy time period. So there we go. All right, so now we're going to play Gavin's song that he recommended by K Rhino. So I know Gavin likes some of that hip hop music. This looks like it's some kind of hip hop, so we'll put it on. Here we go.
I know we come to you a lot, but we keep messing up. Lord save us from all the war makers and fraud capers, and erase the effects of the poison they all gave us. And each day we pray that you take us and reshape us as we race to escape our own snakish behaviors. I'm out the way, that's why I'm reluctant to favors. It's hard to love them when you're not even trusting your neighbors. I stay the course daily, hoping my substance is greater. I'm impatient, but knowing I can't rush the creator. It hurts when my people get swallowed up by the serpent, and thirsting to spend our dollars up with the merchants. We searching for hope, so we follow them to the churches, but shirking the work so the problems are not reversing. Too often we fall cause we're too ingrained with caution, still caught in the thought that conditions change by talking, and take away internal mistrust, jealousy. Plus we need protection from the worst version of us. Lord save us, put trouble behind us, and whenever we lose sight, take off our blinders, please. Whenever we forget the time, quickly remind us, please. And if we get lost, find us and realign us. We tired of crying. Lord save us, put trouble behind us, and whenever we lose sight, take off our blinders, please. Whenever we forget the time, quickly remind us. And if we get lost, find us and realign us. We tired of crying. Lord save us from Satan and his adamant grip. Same thing, same scene, each year the calendar flips. More killing, more shots being lit off from the clip. Queens giving up their body for green, walking the strip. Knowing it's hard, the way that we are, lowered the bar. Best friends for 20 years and now they going to war. We urging the fight, lot of tension emerging tonight. He's serving for life cause he flipped out and murdered his wife. Dope is a vice, how much too confusing to call, cause it's 50 ways to get high and we using them all. Our sons out here shooting and killing like target practice. Our daughters think it's cool to be half naked and ratchet. People going to prison for actions not even worth it. Others surgically worse when you already made them perfect. How can we reverse the dirtiest things the world's seen? What makes a child commit suicide at 13? Lord save us, put trouble behind us, and whenever we lose sight, take off our blinders, please. Whenever we forget the time, quickly remind us, please. If we get lost, find us and realign us. We tired of crying. Lord save us, put trouble behind us, and whenever we lose sight, take off our blinders, please. Whenever we forget the time, quickly remind us. And if we get lost, find us and realign us. We tired of crying. Lord save us from excuse making and false blaming, and restrain the anger filled thoughts that we're entertaining. Block all the dangerous engagements that render us brainless. Refrain us from selling our souls just to be famous. Understand me, I know that we not as good as we can be, so grant me a transformation for me and my family, while breaking the grip of the vices we keep chasing, replacing the ways that lead to incarceration. We love them, so cover the babies up from destruction, and crush any predators try to touch and corrupt them. May we defeat the egregious deceitfulness of the TV. Help us retreat from the evil, mischievous acts we repeat when grieving. Relieve all the pain from us completely. Believe me, it's harder for us, but for you it's easy. All the poverty, depression, and hunger when times are roughest show up and snatch us up from the clutches of this injustice. Lord save us, put trouble behind us, and whenever we lose sight, take off our blinders. Please. Whenever we forget the time, quickly remind us. Please. And if we get lost, find us and realign us. We tired of crying. Lord save us, put trouble behind us, and whenever we lose sight, take off our blinders. Please. Whenever we forget the time, quickly remind us. And if we get lost, find us and realign us. We tired of crying.
That's when you make me rise up, or the God who rules. I don't like nobody to think you can buy me with nothing, 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 nothing. You gotta be right and stand up for a righteous principle, and don't bend on that principle, die on that principle before you let somebody make you give up what is right for a few dollars.
Lord save us.
All right. Well, thank you, Gavin. That was a neat song. I probably will end up listening to that in the future. So there we go. Now, we did have another question that came in from Kim in Ontario. But just a quick reminder, if you've got another question, questions can be sent via Rumble Rants, or you can send them via Cash App. But the best way to do it is buy me a coffee. Caleb Bompin 22. We got a question that came in via Buy Me a Coffee, and then we got a few Rumble Rants that have come in also. So Kim in Ontario said, "Is it possible the USA is currently on the road to fascism?" Yes. Fascism is when you have a long-term crisis of overproduction, when glut, this problem of poverty created by abundance, becomes greater. It becomes necessary for the ruling class to mobilize society for destruction in order to stabilize the economy, right? Capitalism is the only system in history where poverty is created by abundance, where people become homeless because there are too many houses, where people become hungry because there is too much food. And it's taken me years to really understand this, but the book Fascism and Social Revolution by R. Palm Dutt, the book Dialectical Economics by Lynn Marcus, has helped me to understand that fascism is just an attempt to deal with that problem by using heavy-handed state power to engage in destruction to stabilize the economy. And we're seeing that, right? These are fascist policies. Degrowth and fascism are synonymous. It's an attempt to stabilize the economy with destruction and to use the state to do so. There is no fascist ideology. There's no such thing as a fascist policy, I guess you could say, right? Sometimes fascists do this, they do that. The essence of fascism is Western liberal democracy and capitalism collapsing into an authoritarian society in order to enact degrowth policies, to drive down the population and engage in destruction. It is an economic formulation. It is the breakdown of the capitalist system. That is fascism, and it is the natural outgrowth of capitalism in an economic crisis, right? That is the only way they can reboot the economy is with the destruction of the productive forces. It's to stabilize the economy as a result of human creativity and brilliance outstripping the irrationality of the market, right? The capitalist market can't handle artificial intelligence. It can't handle human creativity and brilliance. And so as a result, fascism is an attempt to destroy the productive forces. And what's interesting is that Nazi Germany, right? That's the classic example of fascism. They rebooted their economy with mass destruction, with a military industrial complex and a prison industrial complex, right? They put a bunch of the country in concentration camps, and then they weren't looking for jobs, and they hired a bunch of people to build the concentration camps, etc. And then they restarted military spending, and that's how they stabilized the German economy. Hallemer Schacht, was the economist who implemented the world's first military industrial complex and the world's first prison industrial complex. Well, the thing is, we've had a military industrial complex in America since the 1950s, and we've had a prison industrial complex in America since the 80s. So what are they going to have to do? What kind of dramatic degrowth policies are they going to have to implement in order to reboot the U.S. economy. I mean, you know, the only thing that really ended the Great Depression was the Second World War. And then ultimately, we need a planned economy. We need a society. We need the United States to pivot closer to the rising economy in the East. And we need a government that'll break the power of the big monopolies and rationally organize the economy so that we can have growth. We need an anti-monopoly government, a government fighting against the big monopolies on behalf of the American people. We need a populist movement that could bring about such a government. But it's not going to be easy, right? And we have to plant the seeds with the education, et cetera. But they're going to come up with many different forms of fascism to try and stabilize the capitalist economy, right? And, you know, I mean, the tariffs, you know, Noah has a great video about how the tariffs are a degrowth fascist policy, right? Of trying to stabilize the economy by making it impossible for people to buy things and, you know, and reverse inflation, right? And that fascist economics, the essence of fascism is reducing the amount of value in society, making society poorer so the economy functions, right? That's the essence of fascism. And again, you can read about this in What is Bonapartism? I talk about this, about how fascism is degrowth, and it's in the Where is America Going book. This is a section of the Where is America Going book that I've made as a pamphlet. But yes, we are moving toward fascism, and the essence of fascism is it's an attempt to save capitalism with destruction and utilize the state to control the economy in order to implement degrowth. And it's rooted in the failures of the capitalist system. And this comes across if you read Lynn Marcus. This comes across if you read R. Palm Dutt. This comes across, and you know, you have to understand economics, right? I'm not interested in waging a culture war. I'm not interested in you know, we got to talk about economics, right? That capitalism, it shouldn't be this way. There's no reason anyone should be hungry in America. You go to a Walmart, look at all of that. Look at how much food do we produce in this country, right? And the government, we have so much food. The government buys cheese from farmers and buries it in a cave just to keep the prices of food high. This is ridiculous. It's so clear that humanity has outstripped the irrationality and the narrow restraints of the profit system. And we need a rationally organized economy. We need a national bank. We need to hire the unemployed, right? We need public control of our natural resources. We need an economic bill of rights. We need a state that will break the power of the big monopolies and rationally organize the economy so that we have growth. We have to overcome the irrationality of profits in command in the market. That's what we need to do. And we need a state that will carry that out. That's called innovationism, right? And that's what we are fighting for. And that's what China has, right? They've got plenty of capitalists making lots of money, a lot of private, you know, enterprise, but they have an anti-monopoly state rooted in an anti-colonial revolution that oversees the whole process to make sure that there's growth, right? That's what they've got. And that is very, very good. That is very, very, very good. So, yeah. And that fascism is an economic concept, and they make up propaganda ideology to justify it. Stop trying to look for the essence of fascism in beliefs, right? Was fascist? Hitler was racist. Yep. But people were racist before Hitler. People have been racist since then. That's not the essence of what Hitler is, right? You know, Hitler was authoritarian. There've been authoritarian governments before Hitler. There've been authoritarian governments after Hitler. That's not the essence of it, right? The essence of fascism is in economics, and they will make up anything to justify what they're doing. It is an economic need to stabilize the economy with destruction. That's the essence of what fascism is. And they will make up various ideology to justify it, to build mass support for it. That's the essence of what fascism is. And I hope that that was helpful. So now, Penny says China has zero waste cities. Zero waste cities. So she wants me to put on a video about China's efforts to build zero waste cities. So we'll put that on. Thank you for sending that, Penny. Penny is doing great work, by the way. You know, shout out to you, Penny. You work so hard. Penny gave a great speech at our CPI event. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. She went over the entire history of our organization, where we came from, going back to the Libyan War and my experience in the Workers' World Party. Just tremendous. Penny really gets what CPI is about and is very committed to building this organization and this movement. And we really, really appreciate Penny and all the work that she's doing. And she's in the middle of it right now in Minneapolis. So yeah, we'll put the Zero Waste Cities video that Penny had sent. We'll put that on. And then Hempcar said, if Delta forces really used secret sonic weapons, how can Cuba and other countries defend themselves from these attacks? Can Russia give them tech info to signal back and block it? I don't know the details of supersonic weapons. Look, I do know that Russia and China are doing amazing weapons proliferation right now. And that, part of the game that the imperialists like to play is this idea that, oh, we've got these big giant weapons. No one can ever defeat us. And, that's when Mao Zedong, he said the atomic bomb is a paper tiger, right? And that, that it doesn't work that way. This idea of like, oh, we've got these big giant weapons, no one can defeat us. Well, tell that to the Vietnamese, tell that to the Koreans, right? There's a reason they try not to send troops into countries now. So no, I don't. Their big giant weapons are not going to completely prevent any anti-colonial revolution. Plus, Russia, those S-400 missiles and the Oroshenk, and Russia's doing a lot of amazing weapons proliferation right now. One thing I don't want to do, I really don't believe in war porn. I don't. And I don't want to celebrate weapons, right? But at the same time, what Russia is able to do with the Oroshenk and, don't mess with them. Let me just put it that way, right? So, all right, here is the video that Penny recommended about zero waste cities in China. All right, so here we go.
China, a zero-waste city is defined not as a city with no waste, but as an urban model that aims to minimize landfill disposal. This is achieved through green production and lifestyles, reducing waste at the source, and maximizing resource recovery, driving the environmental impact of solid waste as low as possible.
A zero-waste city functions as an incentive mechanism. Specifically, it serves to propel the sustainable development of society and the economy. Therefore, building such cities represents, in essence, a new model of development.
Under the 14th Five-Year Plan, China designated 113 prefecture-level cities and 8 special regions to advance zero-waste construction. Nationwide, more than 3,000 solid waste treatment projects were implemented, with total investment reaching approximately 560 billion yuan.
In recent years, through pilot projects for the development of zero-waste cities, China has established a comprehensive indicator system, addressed a range of weaknesses and deficiencies, and developed a series of replicable and scalable models. These efforts have accumulated valuable experience for the nationwide construction of zero-waste cities.
China plans to further expand this initiative to around 200 cities during the 15th Five-Year Plan period. Efforts will be coordinated in major economic clusters, including the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region, the Yangtze River Delta, the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macau Greater Bay Area, the cities in the middle reaches of the Yangtze River, and the Chengdu-Chongqing Economic Zone.
到2027年 60% of Chinese cities are expected to participate in zero-waste city construction by 2027, and we aim to implement the initiative nationwide by 2035.
These efforts reflect a nationwide commitment to making zero-waste practices the norm. By integrating zero-waste principles into policy, planning, and community initiatives, China is paving the way for a sustainable future, one where waste is redefined as a resource, enabling cities to thrive in harmony with their environment. 郭玲杰 CGTN, Beijing.
All right. Great video. Thank you, Penny. Thank you. And so now the next question is from Leo Messi. He said, thoughts on Tucker promoting white replacement theory? I know you think it's negative, but how do you talk about this without being a bully? Okay, well, here's the thing, right? So, this is a great example of something I've observed a lot in modern politics. What is white replacement theory? Okay. Now, obviously, the most crude example of that is white nationalists, right? White nationalists, people like Richard Spencer, people like, various neo-Nazi groups have this conspiracy theory that there's a plot by the Jews to wipe out the white people. And that's why the whites need to carve out a homeland and have a whites-only territory, blah, 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 blah. Tucker Carlson doesn't think that, okay? And that, so obviously that is a reprehensible belief, and it's not happening, right? There's no secret plot of people sitting up somewhere going, all right, we're going to wipe out the whites. And the only answer is to carve out a white homeland and fight the Jews. And no, we're not Nazis, right? And Tucker's not a Nazi either. Now, what Tucker Carlson, I can't speak for Tucker Carlson. I haven't seen the clips, but what a lot of conservatives believe is that Democrats are enthusiastic about immigration because they believe that will lead to them getting more people to vote for them, right? Because people that are not white, more recent immigrants, are more likely to be Democrats than Republicans. Now, that's not the same thing, right? You see that like, okay, so one is a crazy racist conspiracy theory that leads to genocidal implications. The other is the idea that maybe the Democrats are more for immigrants because immigrants are more likely to vote for them. And that I see this a lot. For example, right? Critical race theory, right? What actually is critical race theory? Critical race theory is an anti-Marxist, anti-class struggle ideology that says that the issue in America is that white people have life too good, that says the labor movement was a bad thing because labor unions were racist. Critical race theory is an anti-working class ideology that says basically the problem with America is that white people are just white, and that it's specifically anti-communist, specifically anti-labor movement, right? That's what critical race theory is. However, most liberals think critical race theory is just acknowledging Jim Crow, acknowledging racism, acknowledging, the history. And it gets complicated, right? And that I see things being conflated with things, right? One of the most blatant examples of this I saw was, I'm the last person who's ever going to defend the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, but I just saw people saying something false, which is after the death of Charlie Kirk, the ADL, on their website, they list various forms of hate, and there's something called Christian identity. And I saw Matt Gaetz and all kinds of people tweeting out, oh my God, the Anti-Defamation League said that being a Christian is a form of hate. That's not what they said. The Christian identity movement is British Israelism. It's a theory that the white British people are actually the Jews of the Bible. That's what the Christian identity movement is, right? The ADL is an awful group, Zionist in a lot of ways, but they don't think all Christians, that's not what they said. And that, I see things being conflated, right? So Tucker Carlson is not calling for a white homeland. Tucker Carlson doesn't think there's a big plot by the Jews to exterminate the white people, and therefore he's not a white nationalist, right? Tucker Carlson is a Republican, is a conservative who seems to believe that Democrats, I haven't seen all the video, but my understanding is that I think he believes that Democrats are enthusiastic about immigration for their own political gain, which that might be true, right? That's not the same thing. There's a similarity there, right? That's, but that's not the same thing, okay? And there's a lot of this that goes on as people take a very extreme view and they conflate it with a very moderate view on which there is some overlap. Sure, is there overlap between white supremacists saying there's a big plot by the Jews to wipe out the white people and Republicans saying, wow, these Democrats are enthusiastic about immigration because they think it'll help them in elections. Is there some overlap? Sure, it's similar in that you're arguing that some people have something to gain from changing the demographics of America. But it's not the same thing, right? Just like critical race theory is a specific anti-communist academic theory that rejects class struggle, that rejects the labor movement. I mean, it's opposed to W.E.B. Du Bois. It's just a specific theory that says the essence of America's problems are racial and rejects any economics or class struggle. That's not the same thing as saying that racism exists, that's saying that Jim Crow existed, that's saying that the United States, there's the way black people have been treated. Not the same thing. But if you criticize critical race theory, you inevitably get a bunch of liberals who point fingers at you and say, aha, you're saying that racism doesn't exist. That's not what I said. I'm saying that there's a specific academic school of thought that's contrary to what the greatest anti-racists in this country, like Paul Robeson and W.E.B. Du Bois and Huey Newton, believe. There you go. And just like, if Tucker Carlson says, okay, it looks like, you get what I'm saying, right? And I see this in many ways nowadays of ideas being conflated with each other. And look, one of the biggest problems I have noticed in politics now, there's a big effort to not hear people, right? There's a big effort to interpret what people say in a negative way so you can point at them, right? And that doesn't help anything, right? It doesn't help anything, right? You know, that if somebody thinks something, you should listen to them and find out what they actually believe and engage with it. And if they're wrong, maybe argue against it in a way that they can understand. But this idea of like going out of your way to hear something that someone says and say, aha, you're a bad person because you said this, that's the internet. That's Twitter culture. And it's not helpful. And it's a big problem, right? It's people going out of their way to hear bad things and what other people say so they can point at them. And it's a big problem. It's a really, really big problem, right? And it's what's wrong with our discourse, right? And it's, again, this is why I got to tell you, you know, I do a lot of thinking. I'm building CPI right now, right? I have my work as a journalist. I do reporting. I was on air today on RT. Watch RT. RT is great. I'm glad to be working legally for RT again. And, you know, I was doing freelance before, but now the laws and all of that, I'm able to work for RT, which is great. I'm glad to be on RT. And, you know, I do my work as a journalist, and I'm building CPI as an anti-imperialist community. And I'm writing my books and all that, but I'm done. I'm really just done. I'm done with the internet. I'm done with, you know, the internet is rigged. I'm done with the left. The left is hopeless. They're completely hopeless. Look, I don't want to make this the whole thing. All right. You know, because obviously my opinion of the death of this young man today in Minneapolis and my opinion of the death of Renee Good has nothing to do with this. Right. You know, so I don't want people to mishear me, but it's like, the issue is not that what ICE is doing is good. Okay. The issue is that the anti-ICE protests are led by not so good forces, right? Center for Political Innovation, right? We're the only group that has stood up for Uhuru. I mean, barely anyone came to the defense of the Uhuru movement other than Tucker Carlson and CPI. You know what I mean? We stood up for Uhuru. We are the main group advocating peace with Russia. We published a book about the Houthis, about, you know, Yemen and their solidarity with the Palestinians we distributed in bulk. What happened when we went to Minneapolis? What did these people that are, you know, what did the people that are out there, the woke Minneapolis, what was their response to us having a small workshop in Minneapolis? Right? This is what happened, right? If you haven't seen this video, watch. This is what happened when we went to Minneapolis and tried to have a small workshop at a house in Minneapolis. We had like a little workshop in Minneapolis. This is what happened. We went out to Minneapolis to do just kind of a routine small workshop that we do in a number of cities. We've done them before, where we get together, have some classes, get to know different members, different friends. Anyhow, we get out there and we see all these crazy signs posted up all over the neighborhood. Well, it's not alert the membership as of yet, right? Because they want a reaction. If they see they're getting a reaction, that'll embolden them, right? We'll just be extra careful with security at the door. But honestly, I don't think we should not do the event. No, I think we should do it. I guess we'll just proceed with our meeting as usual. Okay, so the first thing is that the break time is the most important, right? The break time when we're actually talking to people is the most important time, right? Actually, when I'm speaking and all that, it's not that important. What's important is when we're talking with the people. On Saturday morning, our main concern was the lack of heat. The Airbnb had not turned the heat on, and it was record low temperatures. It was a very, very cold night, so we're inside the house, and we're figuring we can't really start the workshop until the heat comes on. So then we see them outside.
Burger King! Burger King! Burger King! Burger King! Burger King!
It is 8:30 in the morning.
And it's like 20 below zero.
You're gonna wake up the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everyone's in the neighborhood's gonna hate them.
The house across the street looks abandoned or dilapidated. I don't think they're worried about fascism. They're worried about putting food on the table.
We're worried about getting the heat turned on.
Yes.
It's a little cold here. The heat hasn't been turned on in our Airbnb.
And these guys start preemptively gloating that nobody is showing up.
So we expected you like turning the attendees away. This is amazing. It seems like no one is coming. Wow.
Not knowing that we literally don't have heat, and we're not gonna start the thing without heat. It was actually like a solid hour after they left before we got the heat, and then we had people start coming. Well, actually, I take that back. There was one gentleman they did get to try to intimidate out of attending, a disabled gentleman, which, you know, that's cool.
They shouted at him, "Don't go in there, they'll rape you."
He attended, though. He was not scared of them.
Hello, Gabby.
I've seen you. I've seen you on the
Can we see what they gave you?
Hello.
Can we see what they gave you?
Warning, this is a cult. Press TV. Oh, wow. It's Dugan.
Press TV.
Oh, man. Linda LaRouche. And your name's on here, too.
Really?
Yeah.
What? Famous.
Right? You're a failed political candidate and dedicated follower of Caleb Maupin's. You know, we're inside and, like, laughing about it. The whole thing just looked completely insane. At 8:30 in the morning, in record cold temperatures, you have 15 kids out there wearing COVID masks with signs about spanking and fascism and cults. I mean, the whole thing just had to look completely insane.
What are they saying?
Robin runs the CPI. He's a weird little guy.
One of the chants that they had, which I absolutely loved, was Caleb owns CPI. He's a weird little guy.
Caleb owns the CPI. He's a weird little guy.
They're calling you weird, dancing around with signs that no one understands.
Now, I thought that was very funny.
And by the way, don't you find some of their stuff to just be plain weird?
At one point, Peter Coffin walked out among the protesters. I immediately thought of the scene in The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy wakes up and she's walking among the munchkins.
Come out, wherever you are.
Because they were all like really short in comparison to him. And it made me think that the guy on the bullhorn or one of the people that had thought of that chant, they must have been called a weird little guy at some point in their life.
You're so out of touch. You think CPUSA would be a viable force to put together a picket like this? It's amazing.
They were on the bullhorn talking about communist inside baseball.
Colt, I mean, you started in the RCP, so it's used to Colt.
Rascals or a joke, even to trots.
No, we're trying to show you we care enough to tell you guys what's going on here. We want you guys to get out of the cult. We're trying to show you we care enough. No, we're trying to show you we care enough to tell you guys what's going on here. We want you guys to get out of the cult.
We are going to have some fun with them, but we don't want to be too mean to them because there's a lot of people in this organization around the country, and I'm not going to violate anyone's private business, but more than a handful of people that have joined CPI, they've told me why they joined CPI. And they said, Caleb, you know, I was in these communist circles, I was in my 20s, and I was using drugs. I rock bottomed. You know, I screwed up, I did something wrong, and, you know, I had to go into recovery. And I realized that if I was going to get over my addiction, I couldn't keep thinking in the pessimistic, dark, hopeless way that seems to accompany communist politics in America. I had to be optimistic. And I suddenly started hearing you, and you were the only communist I could stand to listen to anymore. You were the only one that was putting out a hopeful, optimistic message that wasn't tearing people down, that wasn't preaching resentment. I believe there were people out there that are in that same category. Do you know what I honestly believe deep in my soul? I believe that there were people out there today that will eventually join CPI. Let me just put it this way. You can never say that the Center for Political Innovation or myself or Peter, you can never say that we're irrelevant. The fact that we had a small meetup was so important to some people that they woke up on Saturday morning, went out in freezing cold temperatures, and made a huge ruckus to tell everyone just how upset they were about the fact that we exist and we continue to do our work. You know, we were ready to defend ourselves, but they weren't a threat to us at all. They were kind of embarrassing, and they were kind of clowns. And I'm embarrassed for whatever organization let this happen, was involved in making it happen. And I'm also embarrassed for the people that did this protest because you were out there making fools out of yourselves while we were inside talking about the serious issues and how to change the future of our country, how to fight against imperialism, globalism, how to fight for working families. So yeah, certainly an interesting trip to Minneapolis. I'm glad we were there, and yeah, we're going to do a lot more workshops, let me put it that way. Yeah, so yeah, we went out to Minneapolis, and like look at me, all right? I have written books about Marxism. I've spoken at anti-Israel conferences in Iran, and they can't even get along with me, right? I mean, think about it, right? These people, they can't even get along with me, right? But I'm not following the party line and obeying the Democrat Party, right? And so even though I've spoken at anti-Israel conferences in Iran, even though I've written books about Marxism, even though I was protesting police brutality probably before these people were born, somehow I am Satan, I mean, it is beyond me, right? And this is one thing I must say is, like, I don't know if you guys saw, but there's an issue now that I guess one of the ICE agents, and I guess he's like the head of ICE, is also a pastor. And a bunch of people went into his church, and Don Lemon was with them. Don Lemon, formerly of CNN, the journalist, was with them. And they went into his church and disrupted his church service. Now, I don't think they should be doing that. I think that, I don't care. Look, I don't care if this guy was a child molester, right? That you don't, like, that's the idea, right? The idea is that, the love of Jesus is forgiveness for everybody, right? And that you don't interrupt people's houses of worship, right? If this guy was having a political rally, fine, go disrupt. If this guy would protest outside his house, go protest. But you don't go into people's churches and disrupt their activities. You don't do it, right? And that what if there was a group of Palestine protesters and they didn't like some rabbi, and so they went into a synagogue? You think they'd be okay with that? You think that would be okay? I don't think so. Or what if there was a group of Zionists, right, and they didn't like some imam, and they went into the mosque and they disrupted it with Israeli flags? You think that would be okay? I don't think so. Now, I mean, it looks like the Trump administration is throwing the book at these people, and I'm not saying they should go to jail for 1,000,000 years, but no, you shouldn't go and disrupt people's church services, no matter what, right? I mean, and it's pretty basic, but these people are just so full of hate, I mean, I shouldn't be shooting people on the streets of Minneapolis either. I mean, it's a big mess, but I saw that the People's Forum and all that is defending these people going into people's church services. I don't think they should be doing that. I mean, is it too much to say that maybe invading people's churches because you disagree with them is wrong? Or maybe shooting people in the neck, maybe shooting and murdering Charlie Kirk just because you disagreed with him, maybe that was wrong too, right? The woke left, they don't know anything about communism, and they don't know anything about socialism. They don't even know anything about all of this. They're just full of hate, right? And I have dealt with these people. And I came from these people, right? I was one of them. I was all over Occupy Wall Street. You can look at my resume, and they are just, tools of the richest of the rich, of the people that want depopulation and Malthusianism. And if you disagree with them, no matter what you've done, no matter how much anti-racist work you've done, no matter how much Palestine solid, if you disagree with them, they can destroy your reputation. You're Hitler and all of that. It's infuriating. It really, really is infuriating. They obviously don't deserve to die, and I don't believe that ICE should be shooting them. And I mean, ICE is terrorizing people, but it's just, we have to build a real movement, not this bullshit, not this woke bullshit, not defending ICE, and not the MAGA bullshit, the people who are cheering for kidnapping Maduro. We have to just build a real movement. We have to go lower and deeper to the real masses and build a real movement against imperialism. That's all we have to do. And that this woke stuff, it's completely toxic. Look, Noah and I, right? We went to the People's Conference for Palestine in Detroit, a pro-Palestine conference, and we gave away in bulk our book on the Houthis for free. And what did they do? Did they say, wow, that's an interesting book you published about a cause we supposedly agree with, the Houthis. Thanks for doing that. No, they removed us from the conference like we were criminals, right? Just because we were giving books away, right? And I mean, they couldn't even tell us what was in the book that they objected to, They couldn't even tell us. It was just that we wrote it and we're bad. The internet says you're bad. These are evil people, right? These are evil people. And just don't get me started. PSL and the Communist Party USA, these are evil people. They don't believe in the Soviet Union. They don't believe in Stalin. They don't believe in any of anti-imperialism. They are just tools of the Democratic Party. And the way they have reacted to me and CPI, the way that they basically call us white supremacist Nazis and want us to be killed, even though we believe what they're supposed to believe, even though our record of fighting for causes they supposedly believe in is a mile long. That just goes to tell you right there. And again, what are we supposed to do? Right? We're supposed to go out now that ICE murdered, one of these people. We're supposed to now go out and help them take over Minneapolis and drive out Trump so they can run the government and send the FBI after the Uhuru movement and after Scott Ritter? I don't think so. Not saying I like ICE and I'm disgusted with Trump and bombing Iran and kidnapping Maduro, but it's like, so what? So now we have to support them? Just no, we don't. We don't, right? They want to be our enemies, right? We have tried so hard to be friends with PSL. We've tried so hard to be friends with the Communist Party USA. These people they don't want to be our friends. They work for the imperialists. They are nasty, nasty people. And, the American people are getting to the point that they're ready for a real socialist movement. And these people have been put there to make sure they don't get it, to make sure they just get tailism and revisionism, right? These people are a wing of imperialism, right? They're just like what I was talking about on the opening of the stream. They're just like the social democrats who marched the European workers to die in World War I. That's what they are, right? I mean, they are the same thing. They don't want a real working class anti-imperialist movement. They want a movement against Trump to save U.S. imperialism from Trump. That's what they want. They want World War III against Russia. That's what they want. And a lot of good people like me join these groups thinking that they're going to be able to actually support Venezuela or actually support Cuba or actually stand against World War III or actually build a socialist movement against working families. And they learn, like I did, when Libya was bombed and destroyed and these people didn't do jack shit for Libya, right? They learn that this is a scam. It's a scam. And we've got to expose the scam. And we got to build a real movement, right? We got to build a real movement. And we're doing it. We are actually building a real movement. And that's the only way out of this. And it's not exciting, right? Sure, it might be exciting to run to Minneapolis and chase after this, but it's not going to get us where we need to go. We have to build the real movement. In CPI, we're building a real movement. The Uhuru movement are building a real movement. There are people doing the real work right now. And look, one test, and I'll just throw this out there. One test, and this may sound conceited, but hey, take it or leave it. If somebody wants to work with the Center for Political Innovation, they're honest, right? If somebody claims to agree with us and they would like to work with us, they're honest. And if somebody claims to agree with us, but but they're bad, or I read about them on the internet, then they're not honest, right? If you're honest, you want to build a real movement, right? If you're running for office and you want to win, and someone walks up to you and says, wow, I agree with you, do you say, I don't know, I don't want you to vote for me, I don't know if you're... No, you say great, and you shake their hand and you want their vote, right? If you're actually trying to win the election. If these communist groups were at all sincere, they would want to work with us. We agree with them about Venezuela. We agree with them about Iran. We have a similar ideology. Why don't they want to work with us? Oh, because you're competition, because they don't really want to win. They just want to be the bosses. They want to be the bosses of communism, and we're not under their dominion. We're not bowing before them and kissing their ring. We're trying to build a real movement, so we're competition, right? If they were serious, they would want to work with us. They don't want to work with us. They want to murder us. They want to shoot us in the neck. They want to, we have a little workshop in Minneapolis about stuff they supposedly agree with, and they protest outside screaming that we're a cult. They're not honest. If they were honest, they would want to work with us. We work with the Uhuru movement. We work with the Unification Church. We work with different people because we're trying to get real stuff done. And, I mean, look, Christina Khalil, Green Party, we gave her an award at our CPI gathering, right? She doesn't agree with us on everything, but she wants to get stuff done, be an electoral candidate, a pro-peace, pro-Palestine voice. She wants to work with us, right? Jose Vega, he came to our event, was very friendly. It was great to see him there. He's running for office as an anti-war candidate. He wants to win. He knew there'd be people at our event who probably agree with him, so he showed up. Good for him, right? He's a sincere guy, right? But people who they agree with a bunch of what we stand for, especially some of our more unpopular stances, but they just don't want to work with us, they're not sincere. It's because they're not sincere. They're frauds, right? They're frauds, right? There is no reason that if you're pro-Palestine, if you support the Houthis of Yemen, that if you want, if you support Venezuela, that you should hate the Center for Political Innovation, right? And if somebody comes to you and says, oh yeah, we support Venezuela, oh, we support Houthis, but that Caleb, he's no good. Oh, he's a cult. It's not. Then they're not sincere. That's all they are. They're just not sincere. So take it or leave it, right? Take it or leave it, right? Yeah, take it or leave it, right? Sincere people want to work with other people who agree with them to get stuff done. Insincere people want the spotlight and want, all the attention for themselves. Look, we'll work with anybody because we're trying to actually get shit done. And it's that simple. So there you go. There you go. But yeah, I don't know. So actually, here's a cultural moment, right? There's a song. I don't know. Have people ever heard there's a 1960s rock group called The Band? They're called The Band. And The Band has a song that they recorded, and it's actually about the Communist Party's work among sharecroppers in the 1930s. The Trade Union Unity League organized sharecroppers in the South. And they built like farmers unions to fight for the rights of farmers. And the band recorded a really good song it's like from the perspective of a farmer who's organized into the Trade Union Unity League. Yep, King Harvest has surely come. So it is one of my favorite songs. I like it. So I thought I would put that on. And again, it's about a real movement. This guy's a poor farmer. The woke people would never organize this guy. Oh, I bet he, he doesn't even use, pronouns and, is the right pronouns or whatever. But he's a working class guy who's a farmer in the South who's struggling to survive. And he joins the Trade Union Unity League, the TUUL, a communist-led union fighting for the rights of Southern working people. Here we go. One of my favorite songs, King Harvest Has Surely Come.
Corn in the fields, I listen to the rats when the wind blows across the water. King Harvest has surely come. I work for the union, 'cause she's so good to me, and I'm bound to come out on top. That's where she said I should be. I will hear every word the boss may say, for he's the one who hands me down my pay. Looks like this time I'm gonna get to stay. I'm a union man now all the way. Smell of the leaves from the magnolia trees in the meadow. King Harvest is surely come. A dry summer and then come fall, which I depend on most of all. Hey Rainmaker, can you hear the call? Please let these crops grow tall. Long enough I've been up on Skid Row, and it's plain to see I'm nothing to show. I'm glad to pay those union dues, just never remember things being that bad. Then in come a man with a paper and a pen, telling us our hard times are about to end. And then if they don't give us what we like, he said, man, that's when you gotta go on strike. Corn in the fields, I listen to the rats when the wind blows across the water. King harvest is surely gone.
Yeah, I really love that song because it really just kind of captures the essence, right? Like that one verse, right? You know, last year this time it wasn't no joke. My whole barn went up in smoke. My horse Jethro, he went mad. I can never remember things being that bad. But here comes a man with a paper and a pen telling us our hard times are about to end. And if he don't give us what we like, that's when we're going to go on strike. You know, it's about poor working class people fighting for their rights, right? I have read on here the story of Mr. Grossip. We've done even sketches based on it at CPI gatherings. And then there's the story of Jim, two great little stories from the history of the Communist Party during the anti-revisionist period when it was led by Stalin, right? Organizing in the South, in the Jim Crow South, getting black and white workers to come together, organizing unemployment councils. And again, it's not some complicated dialectical thing, right? It's people coming together to assert their economic interests and understand anti-imperialism and build a real movement that cares for people, right? You know, look, I guess one thing I was trying to get at in my remarks is that, you know, communists in the world today, right? People that claim the heritage of the Bolshevik and Russian Revolution, they generally divide into three categories. You have the mainstream communist parties, right? The old CPs, which are mostly pretty lame at this point, right? The Communist Party USA, the French Communist Party, most of those parties, you know, that are, you know, I'm not referring to the ones that are in power, like in China and Vietnam and places like that. I'm talking about, like, you know, in non-communist countries, there's the official communist parties. Most of them have watered it down into nothing. The Japanese Communist Party, they're anti-China, anti-North Korea. They're just a wing of Japanese imperialism at this point, you know. You know, the Communist Party USA that just is lame as hell and votes for Democrats. The French Communist Party that supported bombing Gaddafi and is just part of French imperialism. You know, it was, you know, voting to send weapons to Ukraine. And I mean, they're lame. That's, you know, they have the heritage, you know, back to Stalin and all of that, but they've watered it all down and, you know, into nothing, right? You got that. Then you got Trotskyites. That's Trotsky, who broke with Stalin because he believed in the theory of permanent revolution. And he rejected anti-imperialism, basically. And he wanted to just spread communism to the West. And that there's a million different types of Trotskyites. And occasionally you get Trotskyites who do good things, like Jerry Healy. Jerry Healy was a Trotskyite. And in his Trotskyism, he became a good friend of Gaddafi and the Palestinians long before that was a trendy cause, and was a good guy. Jerry Healy was a pretty good guy. But aside from that, there's a couple exceptions like Jerry Healy. But other than that, you know, Trotskyites tend to be just Western Marxists who they don't like Stalin. They don't like existing socialism. Anti-revisionism is the wing of communism that rejected Khrushchev's secret speech and wanted to preserve that movement that Stalin led, right? And that wing of communism is the best wing, anti-revisionism. There's a lot of weirdness that comes out of it, I would argue, because they, a lot of them followed China when China aligned with the United States and turned against the Soviet Union. A lot of them followed Albania. But anti-revisionism, what makes anti-revisionism special is that it's trying to preserve that movement, that anti-colonial movement that Stalin led, that led to so many big changes, right? And I would argue CPI, we are the true anti-revisionists, because we understand Stalin beyond Marxism, right? That a lot of anti-revisionists are limited by only understanding Stalin as a great Marxist. They don't understand geopolitics and Atlanticism and Eurasianism and the land versus the sea, and they don't understand the American system and the English system, and they don't understand the spirituality. And my book on Khrushchevism, where we get into superego and the efforts to kill the superego and why Khrushchev was so effective in destroying the communist movement. We are the true anti-revisionists because we can understand Stalin and what Stalin did that was good on a higher spiritual plane, right? We understand geopolitics, we understand psychoanalysis, we have a higher understanding of anti-revisionism. Innovationism is a much higher understanding. And we also understand, look, the big problem with Marxism, one of the big problems with it, is that Marxism is very much predicated on the notion of employers versus employees, right? Factory workers, wage workers engaged in production, battling against their employers. That's not how the world economy works, right? I mean, the assembly line is a thing of the past. And we live in the gig economy where every worker sees himself as an entrepreneur. You're not going to build a movement in our time on the basis of wage workers against employers, right? Lenin repudiated that and basically said it's a struggle for national liberation. The working class is the class with the most to gain. It'll lead the national liberation struggle. But even Lenin was saying that's not what it's about. In our time, that's not what it's about, right? And that if you look at modern anti-imperialist countries, they have wage workers, they have capitalists who are aligned with the revolution. In China, the national bourgeoisie. In Nicaragua, their micro-entrepreneurship program. So Marxism, which really emphasizes the struggle of the wage worker versus the employer, the proletarian versus the bourgeoisie, that's not where it's at, right? That's Marxism is limited by that. And that if you continue to just insist you are the true Marxist, you're going to have to argue that you have the correct proletarian line, the right class line, and you're going to be restricted. Innovationism is beyond that. We can understand why Stalin was important. We can understand modern anti-imperialism. We have ascended to a higher plane. Okay? And that's what has given us the ability to keep building our organization. Look, Marxism wears you down. Right? An ideology that says everything's about conflict, everything's about struggle, there is no God, right? It's going to wear you down. It's going to destroy you psychologically. You can't do that for a long period of time. You will just burn out, right? People need God. They need something to believe in, something to strive for. People need forgiveness and reconciliation. People need optimism and hope. And if you have an ideology that just says everything is about conflict, everything's about fighting, and and everything's about conflict, and there's only material, there's nothing spiritual, there's no higher purpose, you're gonna wear yourself out, right? And that Stalin, to some degree or other, transcended that. Look, Stalin, by all official accounts, was an atheist, but no leader in Russia's history ever built more churches than Stalin did. And right now in Russia, there's a lot of people that are Orthodox Christians that believe Stalin was one of them. Right. There are people with there's images of Stalin with a halo on his head. People think that he was, that he was a Christian, and that he tapped into something deeply spiritual related to the land. Right. He was a land messiah, a land savior who arose from the soil. Right. And just like we produced Abraham Lincoln, old Abe Lincoln came up from the wilderness. Right. Abraham Lincoln was a land savior, a land messiah. Who emerged, and it was related to the continental United States and the struggle to build a prosperous economy on the land, as Henry Charles Carey wrote about, against the English system that controlled the trade routes, right? And again, that if you're just stuck in, well, all I can understand is Marxism, Leninism, all I can understand is historical materialism, you're not going to understand the power of what Stalin did. and you're not going to understand the power of what the supreme leader of Iran and what Gaddafi has done. You're not going to get it, right? We are entering a new stage here. We understand what Alexander Dugin teaches. We understand what China and, you know, the rise of a civilization state and Deng Xiaoping theory and Xi Jinping's thoughts. And, you know, we understand Shia Islam and the brilliance. We wrote a whole book about the Houthis and what they're able to do. We are modern anti-imperialists, right? We incarnate modern anti-imperialism. Modern anti-imperialism is eclectic, right? And if you're stuck in the 20th century, you're going to be left behind, right? Only we can offer that, right? And, you know, and take it or leave it. I am not desperate, right? I'm not desperate at this point. We're building our movement. We're doing what needs to be done. We went to the gate of where Maduro was held. We were organizing house parties around the country. We're distributing Houthi books. We're doing outreach. We're doing it, right? Do it with us or don't. You know, that's my attitude. I am done. I am done with any get rich quick schemes. I'm done with any desperation. We have a job to do and we're doing it. Come do it with us. Come do it with us and we will empower you. Just like we empowered Penny. Look, Penny gave a great talk. Penny is a mom in Minneapolis. She's a mom in Minneapolis and she's amazing. And she just gave this talk. This is her talk from the event that we just had. I'm going to put it on. It's an amazing speech that she gave about where CPI came from, right? It's called Our Story of Anti-Imperialism. The text of it is on our website. I'm going to put the video on, right? This is, you know, this is Penny. Penny is amazing. Look at Penny here.
The Minneapolis captain, and she does so much for CPI. She's so dedicated. She's out there sometimes by herself leading rallies to support Maduro, to support anti-imperialism. She's written a book about Ibrahim Traore, translated some of her writings. Just a phenomenal, phenomenal person, a great organizer. I'd like to invite her. She's going to tell us a little bit about what CPI is about.
All right. Thank you, Noah, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. So let me, first of all, thank you guys for taking the time away from your busy schedules, and taking a moment to get away from the wild news cycle and from the abundance of lassitude and hopelessness and rage that is pumped through your phones. So as Noah said, I am Penny Arcos. I'm the regional captain for Minnesota. And I'm going to be sharing with you the history of the Center for Political Innovation. Who are we and where are we going? If you don't know where you came from, then you don't know where you're going. So first of all, how did I get involved? During the pandemic, my son Angel turned 18. And during the George Floyd riots, it was very, very difficult to understand what was going on. And the city was burned down. My son's job was looted. And then you had the COVID lockdowns and no jobs anywhere. And how do you start your life as a new adult, right? And everything that had given us a sense of community and belonging and meaning in our lives, like fixing bikes at Cycles for Change and selling them on Craigslist, playing guitar in youth group at church, and I got to be a part of it. And being a part of a community outreach at the light rail, we would pass out fresh bread and we would play guitar and sing songs, and people were just blessed by the music in their busy day as they were getting on the light rail. And it was all just ripped away from us during the lockdowns, the endless lockdowns. And then my mom, the most precious woman you will ever meet, was no longer able to take care of herself in Illinois. And she came up here with her whole life in 2 duffel bags. And I was like, that's it? That's it? That's all there is to life? You work, you raise a kid, you take a few vacations, and then you hope someone can take care of you at the end of your life. And I had to scramble to figure out how I was going to take care of her. And I couldn't take care of her, and it was traumatizing. And then I had to scramble through the healthcare system and the insurance red tape and figure out how to get the right care for her. And so I'm here to honor her right now. And then the siege on Gaza began. And then the war in Ukraine began. And I started to, as I saw a kid in Ukraine that looked just like my son, I was terrified because I wondered, what if Biden or whoever was running the country at the time decided to call up a draft and drag my son onto the front lines to start a nuclear war with Russia? What am I going to do? And in my search for answers, people that I respected, friends and family members, the only thing they could say was, well, America has a middle class, Russian oligarchs. And I wanted to know why are we spending billions of dollars for foreign wars to start a nuclear war against Russia? And why are we spending billions of dollars to blow up babies in the Middle East? I thought we were pro-life, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to believe in? So one of my friends from a former church, one of her responses was, well, when the Lord returns, Jerusalem, wait. So you mean to tell me that my son and I marched around the Minnesota Capitol year after year in the middle of February, froze our tushies off to save the babies, and now it's God's will to blow up babies in the Middle East because Jesus Christ is coming to town? Can you explain that to my son? I thought so. So then I went to the DNC convention in August. I was trying to figure out what can we do about this? I've been to these marches and they're not even on the news. Millions of people go to march and nothing happens. The war keeps going. And so I went to a Jill Stein event and okay. But when I was in Chicago, I was at the Mexican Art Museum and I met Gabby and Phil. Raise your hand, Phil. Yep, and Gabby was the one that was checking you in. They were passing out books at the Mexican Art Museum. I said, hey, I've seen them on Caleb's channel. And they invited me to an upcoming workshop in October that was titled, Why Are They Taking Us to War? Why are they taking us to war? They want to sell weapons. Why else? But Caleb explained how capitalists need constant war to open up new markets and to support the military-industrial complex. And he also explained a 4-point plan that CPI has to rescue our economy and to build the peace bridge and to end the wars and rebuild America. So I was curious and I kept digging. And when I got home, I was inspired by Jose Vega. I don't know if you're familiar with him in New York. Jose Vega does all these interventions. He's here. Where's Jose? I was inspired by Jose Vega and all his interventions, especially against AOC and all the Democrats. So I intervened on Ilhan Omar at a town hall. And I had tried to confront her many times about the Ukraine war, and she wouldn't listen. So I got up there. We would like to know as American people why you continue to support sending billions of taxpayer dollars to Nazis in Ukraine to start a nuclear war with Russia. China is not our enemy.
I need you to leave, please, ma'am.
China's not our enemy. Russia's not our enemy. No more money for rich men's wars.
Take your stuff.
No more money for rich men's wars. No more money for rich men's wars. No more money for rich men's wars. No more money for rich men's wars.
Point. It's a good point, Democrats.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hennepin County Commissioner Irene Fernandez.
No more money for rich men's wars. I was out of there in 45 seconds. That's all I lasted. It's 45 seconds. So that's how I got involved. And I've been building a team since then. We had a workshop in February and got interrupted by crazy protesters, but it's been a great experience. And I get my family involved as well, my mom and my son. And so to understand Center for Political Innovation, you need to understand Caleb's background first. So I'm going to give you a little history on Caleb before I get into the history of the CPI. Caleb has always stood for justice and solidarity in his life. When he was young, his mom was a librarian, and he joined his mom on the picket line to protest for security guards at the library, even though her library already had security guards. That's what solidarity is about. It's not just about you. And so when he was in college, he witnessed police brutality against 2 African-American girls who were protesting at their high school about budget cuts. And his video was used in court and acquitted the girls against the charges that were raised against them. So you see, it's about solidarity. It's not about you. And also in his search for truth, Caleb studied the successes of economies like Russia and China and Cuba and Nicaragua, and all the lies that we've been told that it's all a failure, it never works. But he learned and he studied and he wanted to know more. So in 2007, he joined the Workers' World Party to protest the Ohio death row and the Iraq War. In 2010, they relocated Caleb to New York City, and he ended up being a part of Occupy Wall Street, and he joined the International Action Center and became a spokesperson for a world-renowned human rights advocate, former Attorney General Ramsey Clark. Then 2011, Obama bombed Libya, the most prosperous country in Africa. They had a great man-made river, the irrigation project, all across Libya, and people from all around Africa could come and get a job and have a stipend for starting a family and money for education. And when that happened, the World Workers' Party was very, very weak. They did almost nothing to support Gaddafi. They were more worried about catering to the Democrats, while at the same time, working class people stood with Gaddafi because they understand he was fighting the same international global cabal that is grinding nations into poverty, this international banking system that is like a big giant casino, basically. It's not real money. So now, what is it? It's now an open-air slave market, and thousands of people drown in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean Sea, trying to get away. Libya before freedom, Libya after freedom. That was the turning point for Caleb. That was it. So Caleb began a journey around the world as a journalist to find out the truth about other countries and what's really going on. In 2013, he attended the World Youth Festival in Quito, Ecuador, and he was very impressed by the professionality of delegates from Cuba, China, Vietnam, and the DPRK. In 2014, he went to Iran, and he met anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist organizers, and he learned about their economy that's called not capitalism, but Islam, or the resistance economy. And it's a lot like socialism with Chinese characteristics. And you can compare it to the destructive forces of lightning versus the harnessed electricity. Lightning, what does it do? Come down, strike a tree, the tree falls on your house. It strikes where it will, and it's not a good thing. And when you harness that electricity, you can power your home. You can charge your cell phone. We got lights here, right? And it serves you. So Frederick Engels wrote, I'm going to kind of summarize, but he wrote in his book, Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, social anarchy of production gives place to a social regulation of production with a definite plan to serve the needs of the community and the individual. So you got lightning and you got harnessed electricity. You got the anarchy of capitalism and imperialism, globalism, or a planned economy that serves the community and serves the people. So in 2015, Caleb risked his life on a Red Crescent mission to Yemen with a bunch of doctors from Iran and volunteers. And Saudi Arabia bought them, and it created an international scandal. But on that boat, Caleb was discussing his faith and their faith with these Iranians, and he reconnected with his Christian faith, which he was previously ashamed of. And they told him to be proud of his heritage. And also he reconnected with his abolitionist heritage. He's a descendant of the great Reverend Charles Finney, who was part of the Second Great Awakening in America, which is a mass movement of Christians against slavery. And that's what we are, a movement not just of Christians, but whatever faith you have. I'm still on my own faith journey, to break the system of imperialism, globalism, and to lift the world out of slavery of the anarchy of the market. So also he went to Venezuela and experienced Bolivarian socialism firsthand. And back home, when the Workers' World Party could not comprehend the success of Venezuela, Caleb said that's enough. And he launched his own study group called Students and Youth for a New America. In 2018, he attended the Alternatives to Globalism conference, and he discussed 21st century anti-imperialism. And the Russiagate was at its height. The internet was Alex Reed Ross, who was part of the Democratic Socialists of America, supposed to be a good guy, right? Socialism, a CIA asset, decided to publish a hit piece on Caleb in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, just to prove that Caleb was fascist. So we're not just trying to look cool on the internet. We're teaching working families why our system is failing us and what we can do about it. How can we change it? We publish books, we do webinars, we do workshops, but some of the books that we've published, the first one was The Green Book, which is Gaddafi's economic plan for Libya. BreadTube. BreadTube serves imperialism. Caleb wrote this and exposed the British and CIA intelligence behind the quote-unquote socialist streamers on YouTube. That made a big impact. Where's America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution is published in Chinese, and it's available on the Chinese mainland. Trotsky and the neoconservatives, the whole story. It was #1 on Amazon in Radical Thought for 3 weeks. Get a copy of that. Yeah. The Houthis. Houthis are heroes. Yeah. Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? We've passed out over 1,000 of these at pro-Palestine events. And recently, Caleb and Noah went to a PSL event, and they got kicked out for passing these books out. You know. So yeah, they really support the Houthis, don't they? Khrushchevism. Study in psychological warfare. We are having study groups across the country and even in Australia about the psychological warfare that began during the Cold War against mass movements. And we are bracing ourselves to strengthen ourselves and understand the tactics that the intelligence uses to break up mass movements. A lot of books. So then, ¿qué es el innovacionismo? What is innovationism? We got it translated into Spanish now, so if you have any Spanish friends, you can pick up a copy there. And, sorry, lots of books. Africa's Flame, The Rise of Ibrahim Traoré. This is my book. Yeah. This is my book. I have a display over here about the projects. It's all in the end of the book, 3 Years of Sovereignty, but you can see the pictures and read about the projects they've done with industrializing and agriculture. And it's called Faso Mebo, where they're paving the roads. They're building an expressway between Bobo Dioulasso and Ouagadougou, which is the capital and the second largest city. And the education, patriotism for the kids, and it's just amazing what they're doing. And it's endogenous development. They nationalize their gold mines, and they're focusing on endogenous development of agriculture and industry of all kinds to support economic sovereignty. Because if you can't depend on your own country to make food, then you're dependent on the imperialists who want to destroy you. So hands off to Ibrahim Traoré. So picture in your mind, what would America look like? What would the world look like if American leaders invested in building our country instead of bombing everyone else's country and installing puppet regimes all around the world? Just picture that. That's why we're here, because we have that vision. So what can we do? Who are we, right? We're just little people, right? No, we are building a mass movement. What can we do to move our country in that direction? So I'm going to give you a glimpse into what CPI has already been doing since 2021. Hold on, it's going to be a fire hose of information, but it's important to know what we've done, because we're not just messing around the internet and rigging the algorithms. We are out here, a real life organization, making friends, and we really want to end the wars and rebuild America. So since 2021, we've been on the ground taking action with workshops and webinars and little conventions like this. We're trying to teach people to get past the red team, blue team agenda and to unite with working families around the world to end U.S. imperialist aggression. In 2022, opposition to the Ukraine proxy war was our main priority. When the African People's Socialist Party, Uhuru, thank you, Lisa. When the Uhuru offices and homes were raided by the FBI, they were threatened with 15 years in jail and hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines for being quote unquote Russian agents for a thought crime. And we were the first, CPI was the first one on the ground to invite them to a conference, honor them as heroes, because we understand if the FBI can go after them for thought, for thinking, for opposing U.S. imperialism that's trying to crush Russia, then they can come after us too. And so because of that, blackmailers threatened the volunteers and the attendees, but the conference went ahead anyways. And it was featured in Newsweek. How about that? And important influential people like Tara Reid and Garland Nixon were able to attend. And yeah, and Tara Reid knows Tucker Carlson, and because of that, Chairman Amali was on Tucker Carlson's show. It snowballs. It just snowballs, and that's the importance of getting together like this, because we meet each other. So the smear campaign went ahead anyways, and we shut down CPI for a while, and careers dropped out, and we reemerged stronger than ever. And 2023 we're the main voice for peace. In February, we sponsored Rage Against the War Machine with the Libertarian chair, Angela McCurdle, and we had a reception to honor Scott Ritter.
What this man has to say. Scott Ritter is here. Scott Ritter is here. We are proud that Scott Ritter is here. This is a hero. This is a hero right here. We love you, Scott. We love you.
In March, when Biden had his summit for democracy, we had our summit against hypocrisy. In September, a small group of us from CPI confronted Tsai Ing-wen, the puppet president in Taiwan. And she was selling war in our country, and so Caleb and others tried to get out of our country. Stop selling war in our country. China is not our enemy. That's right. And also in September, Caleb interviewed President Ibrahim Raisi, the president of Iran. May he rest in peace. In 2024, CPI stood with our allies to demand an end to imperialist wars. In February, Caleb held a UN press conference to highlight the Uhuru case and the weaponization of FBI against support for Russia. In March, Caleb and Noah went to the World Youth Festival in Sochi, and they also brought up the case of Uhuru with President Putin. And they also asked how we could restore relations between America and Russia. In June, CPI co-sponsored the reunification event, reunification of the Korean Peninsula with the LA Family Church. In August, I think it's up here. Sorry. In August, this book had already been out since 2020, Kamala Harris and the Future of America. And the day that Kamala Harris was crowned the nominee. Democracy. No kings, no queens. Forgot, she's not a king, she's a queen. This book was banned on Amazon all of a sudden, the day that she was the nominee. So, social media outrage forced Amazon to restore the book. And Kamala lost. So that was a lot of fun. That really was great. I was like, wow, we can really do something. Wow. So October was my intervention with Ilhan Omar. And December, Caleb and others went to the trial, the free speech trial of the century, to support Uhuru in Tampa, Florida. And we launched our Peace MAGA campaign with a big banner with Trump and Kim Jong-un shaking hands. And only peace can make America great again. And we went to the Trump Tower, New York City Library, and the Madison Square Gardens. 2025, I'm just going to give you a little glimpse because Caleb already published our whole year in review, but we had our busiest year yet. It's amazing what we've done. We continued Peace MAGA at the DC inauguration with a big Peace Bridge banner and the Trump Kim Jong-un banner to highlight the possibility of peace under the Trump administration, not to support Trump or not Trump, but to highlight the possibility of peace, that's what we want people to push for. And the only way that a president can do that is if he has mass support from the population, from the working class. Throughout the year, we held workshops and rallies to support peace talks to end the Ukraine war. April 30, after U.S. AFRICOM was signaling regime change intent in Burkina Faso, we joined an international day of action. I believe Black is Back Coalition did a thing in Chicago as well to support Ibrahim Traore. We marched around the streets with our signs. We said, hands off Africa, hands off Traore, hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa, hands off Traore, hands off Uhuru. In October, this was so fun. We crashed the No King Circus. And yes, it was great. And we marched around with our signs. In Minnesota, they were standing around, bouncing around with their Garfield costumes and hippopotamus and frogs and you name it. And I was out there with a big banner of Maduro. It said, hands off Venezuela. There was one lady there that had another sign, hands off Venezuela. Everyone else was like, shut up, up. And you're being disrespectful. And I said, it's disrespectful to invade another country. That's right. So now where are we? Where are we? Because these clowns did not support, just clowns. They don't support Maduro until the day after he was kidnapped. Oh, hands off Venezuela. And now the Republicans say, hey, you said no kings, and now he's supposedly a dictator and a king. So we are consistent. We are against imperialism, globalism. We stand with anti-imperialist leaders around the world. We stand with Uhuru and Black is Back. They are our heroes. So now my family and I participate with members of our community in these peace rallies. And we write songs and we sing songs about building the peace bridge. My mom's legacy is the last song that she did is, we've been working on the peace bridge all the live long day. And we did that at her nursing home with her nursing home staff in front of the Christmas tree. And so that's her legacy. So what does this have to do with you? Like I said, we're not an internet fandom. We exist to carry out operations around the country, and even in Australia. We have a member in Australia. The threat of a new world war is hanging over our heads like a Damocles sword. And we are going to resist the threat of a low-wage police state. We want to rebuild America and end the wars. So we're not trying to revive the Soviet Union. We don't identify with the quote-unquote communists, the ones dancing around in hippopotamus and Garfield costumes and burning American flags. We know our country has a dark history, and we admit that, but we also have heroes like John Brown and Caleb's ancestor, the Charles Finney, an slavery movement. And so we, like I said, we admit that there is a dark history, but we want a brighter future for America and for the world. And so you have a choice. You can continue to live your life in your phone, marinating in the lassitude and anger and rage and hopelessness that they feed you every day on your scroll, on your feed, or you can join us. It's not for everybody. It takes work, it takes dedication, but you can make new friends, and you can step out of your comfort zone, and you can take steps to demand that we rebuild America. America is ready. America is ripe. The earth is awakening, and America must join.
Yep. That was a great speech from Penny. Really just all about what we're about and why CPI is the real deal. And it's really great. So yeah, I'm glad to be streaming again, folks. This just feels so natural to me. It has been way too long. I had the flu and oh boy. But now I'm back, and if you got any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. The night is young and church is canceled tomorrow because of the storm. So, if you got any more questions, hit me with your best shot. Hit me with your best shot. I saw Leo Messi sent me a TikTok video. I can't show TikTok videos. I don't know how to download them. But thank you, though, Leo Messi. We do appreciate it. If anybody has any other videos or any questions they'd like to ask me, by all means, feel free. Join the Center for Political Innovation. Our organization is growing, and we're doing great work. Mark your calendar this summer. August 15th is going to be our national convention in the Chicago area. We're going to have a 7-day program for members from the 12th to the 19th. So if you want to spend some time and get to know us and become, an innovationist, get your accreditation as an innovationist and get to know other people in the group, mark your calendar. The last year, the 7-day program was really, really tremendous. This year it's going to be great. So, we're doing great stuff. And I'm working on, I've got a new book that's going to be coming out soon. I'll tell you all about it. We got a lot of different stuff going on. Noah gave a great speech as well during the event we did in New Jersey. He gave a tremendous speech, which was really, really great. We'll probably show that tomorrow night on the stream, and we're just going to keep building. We're building an organization. We're building a movement. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Yeah. And look, we just can't afford to get caught up in being reactive. We made our statement. We went to the jail to make our statement about Maduro. We're not thrilled about what ICE is doing, but at the end of the day, we just have to build a mass movement. There's really no way around it. There's no alternative. We have got to build an anti-imperialist community, and we have got to do it. And no one's going to do it for us. There is no alternative. We just have to build the movement. We have to build an anti-imperialist community where real working people and real communities are learning about anti-imperialism, and that's what has to be done. Yep. That's us. That is our organization. Yeah. Looks like I'm headed to LA at some point in the coming months. Looks I'm headed to Minneapolis. I don't know if it'll be soon or not. Looks like I'm headed to Chicago. We got a lot of work to do. We got to build this movement. because it's only this kind of movement that is going to save us from imperialism and from the chaos that we are facing. So, yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions that have come in, and that's okay. I'll be back soon. I don't even want to end this because it's been too long. I have not streamed in so long. It just seems like it's been so long since I have streamed, and I'm so glad to be back. And it is streaming keeps me on the right path. I got to tell you, it's not just me, you guys enjoying me when I get on here. It's me enjoying you. This is how we keep ourselves grounded and we got to just keep going. So thank you all. Thank you for being amazing and for believing in this project, because we need people who believe in this project. We're meeting new people all the time. And I mean, shout out to Cassie, who was at the event. Shout out to Robert, who was at the event. I mean, we're just meeting new people all the time. We're organizing. We're doing great stuff. So thank you, everybody. Everyone who believes in this, everyone who is committed to seeing a world beyond imperialism. Thank you. And I guess I'll put on the closing music and we'll be back probably tomorrow night. So here we go. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.